are off now.
Okay.
All bets are off.
Yeah, we did the same.
We were going to, but we just had too much going on. So we did it this last weekend.
Lovely.
I think we are missing Elisa and Michelle. And I know Michelle was having some technology difficulties. It was restarting her computer. So
I'm here.
Oh, there you are.
Sabrina, we are live. I can be looking for Michelle. I don't know if we want to wait a few minutes or begin.
Let's see here. I don't have an update from her, so let's go ahead and start. All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the December 7th regular meeting of the Ames Community School District Board of Directors. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I move we approve the agenda.
Second.
Moved by Bankin, seconded by Beerbaum. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Okay, passes 6-0. And Director Franzen, can you please read the purpose statement?
Sure. The Ames Community School District commits to equity and access that empowers every individual to reach their full personal and educational potential.
Thank you. All right. The first item on our agenda tonight is our celebrations and recognitions, and I am going to turn it over to Eric for this one.
Yeah, for all of the school board members, there are a lot of other panelists on here tonight, and that's because we have a lot to celebrate. So it seemed like the stars combined here a little bit, and we have really three things that we want to spend the first part of this board meeting to celebrate. The first, as you can see on the agenda, is the Healthiest Ames Mask Drive. And over the summer, and really they're continuing to do it, Healthiest Ames has really gone above and beyond to help supply masks to the school district. They had bins outside of our district office for the longest time where they encouraged community members to come get materials and sew them and then return them. And in all, they helped donate over 15,000 masks to the district, 12,000 of which were handcrafted. And so on here today, we have Gail Johnston, who is a part of Healthiest Ames, as well as Ann Thompson, and Andrea Cardenas, who is the health promotion coordinator for the city of Ames. And so I just wanted to give those three an opportunity to talk a little bit about this project so that we can really celebrate them publicly during this school board meeting.
Maybe Andrea would like to speak first.
Sure, I'll go ahead. Can you hear me all right? Can you hear me, Gail?
Yep, we can hear you.
Great, okay. Thanks so much for having me. And Healthiest Ames, you know, we're really proud of what this community was able to achieve. One of our aims with Healthiest Ames is to improve the health of the Ames community overall. And we have a focus, one of our focus areas is on community connectedness. And we felt like this project really reflected on being able to bring so many different people in the community together around this cause of getting masks for kids within the Ames school district. And this was really important because we know that masks are effective at preventing the spread of COVID-19 and that people can be contagious before they know that they have it. And so wearing masks anytime that you can't be farther than 6 feet from someone is really important. And, you know, in addition to that, getting every kid a mask or every student in Ames school district, not only does it protect them while they're at school, that's something that they have that they can take out when they're out in the community and other places. And so it really contributes to reducing the spread of COVID in our community overall. So I'll let Gail handle talking more about the project. Thanks.
Thanks, Andrea. So, you know, Mr. Rogers says, when there's a crisis, look for the helpers. And it was amazing to me the way people in our community stepped forward to help out with this mask project. And it's easy to think, well, of course, people needed to sew the masks, but people also needed to wash and iron the fabric and drive to Des Moines and cut the blanks and put together kits. And then after the mask came in, they had to look at what had been done and maybe fix a seam or repair things, then we had to wash the masks again, and then we had to package them up and as requested, 32 in this bag and 24 in this bag and labeled for fellows or labeled for the middle school. And it was just astonishing how we had over 200 volunteers who gave significant hours to this project. And it was really heartwarming to see the way the community came together for this. Anne, do you want to talk a little bit?
Sure. We also needed some money for this project, and that also was heartwarming in terms of people's willingness to donate it. We needed money for materials for the masks and also money to buy some ready-made masks to fill out the needs there. And we had donors, individual donors donated more than $3,000. We had several organizations that made significant contributions, and they include the Mary Greeley Foundation. Healthiest Ames also made a significant financial contribution. The Greater Iowa Credit Union, the Story County Community Foundation, the McFarland Clinic, both the Kiwanis Club and the Rotary Club contributed. So we were very appreciative of the participation and the fact that we could raise just about $12,000 to take care of the financial piece of the program. It was a great example of the community coming together.
I just want to really quickly say on behalf of Ames Community School District, all of our staff and our students and our families, thank you so much for this donation, for those people that donated money, and then for those that donated time and talents to make these. We are very, very thankful.
Thanks. We were happy to help.
I will say, in addition to acknowledging this, really, it was a community effort publicly here, I want to point everyone to our social media platforms later this evening. We have a video that we put together, that also shows our thank you. So for any community members who follow us on social media and they weren't here, watching the school board meeting this evening, we're going to publicly send out a thank you, not only to Healthiest Ames, but our entire community who really pitched in to make this happen. I think, thank you for outlining all of the hours and effort that went into this, because it's more than, just simply making masks. There's, a really large process involved, and it requires a lot of time and effort. So thank you so much.
We were happy to partner with the district again.
Sabrina, you want me to move on to the next one, next celebration?
Sure.
So if you can believe it or not, this is actually a pre-COVID story. Does anyone remember a time when that was? But this is a really great story, and we have on here today Dana Goodwin, who is a teacher at Ames Middle School, along with Principal Jonas Michael, as well as an American Heart Association representative, Amy Knoll. And the middle school, actually back in February, pre-COVID, they started fundraising money for the American Heart Association and were recognized as a top 10 fundraising school because those students raised over $200,000. And so, Dana, I'm going to kick it over to you to talk about this a little bit.
Thank you. As was stated earlier, for the last, I apologize for not knowing, several years, it's been at least 5 years, we have partnered with the American Heart Association through Amy Knoll as our American Heart Association rep. And we've had the week to 10-day fundraiser that we've coordinated within our PE department with myself, Jesse Von Barron, and RJ Voss, that we've done some activities with the students during the day. And then based on what students have raised, we've had some celebrations and some activities for those students during the school day. So heart health is obviously important, not only to everyone, but really is a focus for our PE staff, obviously with exercise and things of that nature. So that's kind of the background. And Amy Knoll is on here also to say a few words.
Yeah, well, thank you. First of all, following up after the mask program, being a science and research-based organization, that's awesome. So way to go, and thank you for doing that for our schools. And so on behalf of the American Heart Association, thank you for having me at your meeting, and thanks for participating in our programs. And at Ames Middle School, we have participated for the last 6 years, and that 200,000 was cumulative for all 6 years that we've been participating in the last 6 years. But I just wanted to explain real quick, what is American Heart Challenge in case you hadn't heard of it before. It's a service learning program where we don't only raise funds, but we want to complement what you're already doing educationally. So we provide education for nutrition, for exercise, vaping. So I came in and did a program and taught all of the kids, because we know the earlier that we can reach these kids, heart disease is 80% of the time preventable if we just make healthy choices, but we don't know what those healthy choices are. You only know what you know. So it's providing that education. The earlier we can provide it, the better that our communities are going to be and the healthier we are all going to be. So it's a service learning opportunity for the kids. If they want to do the fundraising portion, they can. It's not required, but we hope that they all learn some of these healthy choices that we present to them. It's part of being something bigger than yourself. Being on the school board, I'm sure you guys want your students to become better citizens coming out of school than when they started school. So it's the opportunity to learn how to help others and be kind and be ready, and all of these things that we want our students to learn, those skills to be a better employee when they grow up and stuff like that. So those are the things that we want to impress and teach the kids, especially now in the time of COVID, when we're at home and social emotional health is so very important. If you have a healthy heart and you're making healthy choices, that's also going to help your social emotional health. We also provide US Games gift certificates to the PE department. So depending on how much the school raises, then the department also can earn gift certificates to purchase PE equipment. I know there's a lot of great causes out there and they're wonderful, but I'm a little biased that I think that there's nothing more relevant than the American Heart Association, because we all have a heart. So it's important to learn how to take care of our hearts, keep them healthy. We also had a young man, a student in the school that was on a heart transplant list. And so that helped rally the kids around, seeing their classmate, oh my gosh, he's in Iowa City, he needs a heart. So I also wanted to impress upon the fact that the American Heart Association in the last 5 years has been able to fund 87 different studies, research studies in our state of Iowa alone. That is 84 of them at University of Iowa hospitals, 4 at Iowa State, and then, oh, I'm sorry, I said the wrong, 88, and then 1 at DMU. So that's to the tune of $16.3 million that we've been able to fund in our state alone because of programs such as American Heart Challenge that Ames Middle School has been participating in. Of course, we have alumni, Fred Hoiberg, Billy Finley. They're very in tune, and they have come and helped present at the school as well. So the last thing, and then I'll shut up, but I'm just wanted to also mention we've funded $2.5 million in COVID research, because we know that folks that have underlying health conditions such as obesity, heart disease, Alzheimer's, diabetes, hypertension, arthritis, kidney disease, they all have greater risk for developing COVID. And then the rates are significantly higher for heart disease among brown and Black communities, just because of lack accessibility to healthy foods, education, all of these things. So it's important to provide these in the school and be a partner in education so we can teach these kids to be healthier citizens and healthier people as they grow through life. So I know that was a lot, but I want to say thank you so very much and present to you a couple of awards. Ames Middle School last year was number seven in the entire country for American Heart Challenge, $13,953. I don't know if you can see that, but that's amazing. And then the other, so thank you. First of all, thank you so very much. And then the other award, number 1 in the entire country for online fundraising. Every single penny except $41 was raised online. And I know Jonas put a big challenge out to all of his students. He himself raised, I think, $3,000. He at the assembly challenged every student to raise a certain amount, and he gave a $1 donation for all 1,100 students right there at the assembly. So anyway, I could go on, and I'm sorry that I have for too long, but thank you. We cannot thank you enough for all that you've done and provided. And we just look forward to continuing to partner together and helping to educate our students in the community.
So I'll just quickly summarize by just saying thank you to Dana, RJ, and Jesse, our PE teachers, who have led this effort for the last several years. It's their leadership that really has gotten us to this place. But I also want to end by saying that I'm extremely grateful for our students in our building. They really raised up to the challenge. We put that in front of them, and I think we were well on our way to meet our goal, but COVID hit and cut our fundraising efforts short. But I just want to acknowledge our students for the hard work that they put in to give to an organization that is supporting so many lives. And as Amy noted, it hit really close to home for our school. We had a young man who thankfully was able to get a heart transplant, and he's well on the way to recovery. So it shows that this does not discriminate against age, and that it really does impact so many people. So I'm just proud to be a part of this organization and support this organization on a personal level as well. So thank you.
Mr. Michael and Mr. Goodwin, thank you so much for your work on this. And then to the rest of the PE staff and other staff that work on this. This is a great honor for us. And I know that it does hit very close to home on many levels at the middle school. And so thank you again for your work on this.
All right, we do have one more celebration for this evening, and it is the state championship by the Ames High girls swimming and diving team. I'm gonna play some background video here as we talk about this. I know we shared this once already on social media, but I think it really drives home the effort that our girls swim team, they went through this season. You know, they had to start the season with the passing of their longtime coach, Dan Flannery. And then, you know, we already knew that we were going to have a very complicated COVID season with the mitigation steps there. But they knew going into state that they were going to have an opportunity to really make a lasting impact and honor his legacy. And they certainly didn't disappoint. They won their 9th team titles, the girls swimming and diving team, 9th team title in 11 years, and it's the 91st state title in Ames High history. And so I'm going to kick it over to Ames High Athletic Director Judge Johnston and also the Ames High swim coach Joe Fisher.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks everybody for having us tonight. Eric, you just took away half my speech, so that's okay. But I want to thank Eric for all the coverage and the videos and the support that he did for this awesome swim program this year. We started out, you know, there in the summer, kind of in a downer with the passing of Dan, and then real quick, we had to turn this thing around and start gaining back on how we were going to pull this season off. And from my desk, I couldn't be more thankful for the bond that Coach Joe Fisher had with Dan. They swam back together in college. They're best friends. Joe's been in our program, and it was real easy for me just to pass the baton to him to take this and run with it, which I knew he would do. And we hired 2 assistant coaches in Ben Utesh and Cameron Rasmussen, who are former swimmers for our Ames boys program, but they knew how to come in and support Joe and keep the Ames model going here. And that's keeping the bar really high in swimming. One thing that we just learned of a couple days ago is our team, our girls swim team, got a distinguished academic award. The combined team GPA for this group, who's in the water at 6 a.m. in the morning and 6 p.m. at night and on the weekends, team GPA of 3.80. So I tell people we're kind of the Stanford of the CIML. We've got great athletics and we've got great academics, and there's proof right there of it can be done in the water with the demands of that season and in the classroom. So outstanding job. And then the last thing before I turn it over to Joe is, you know, at the end of the meet, when we won our championship, it's always tradition for the winning coach to jump in the pool. And, you know, when Joe touched his chest and raised a finger to the sky to celebrate Dan and to thank Dan for being there. It was really touching, and what a close-knit group, and just so thankful for our girls, our parents of the swim program, and Joe and our 2 assistant coaches to pull this thing together, not only with the passing of Dan, but during COVID. And they just got it done like they always do. So last thing, Joe, I've been looking for that darn trophy, and I see it sitting there in the back of you, behind you, hiding back there. I've been wondering, where's that darn trophy? So good job of placing the trophy in a good spot tonight. So Joe Fisher, you take it away.
Yeah, I wondered if you'd catch that. I told Judge he's gonna have to pry that one out of my house. I'm sure it'll make its way to the school eventually. But I just want to echo Judge's words and just thank you to everyone for the support. And I know the girls really appreciate everybody behind them, and it was just a really special season after all the challenges of 2020. And I'm just so proud of these kids, and they work hard. And we talk a lot about representing your school and your community and each other, and these girls are just the perfect example of Ames High pride and everything we look for in the athletes at Ames High, and they just work their tails off. So everybody asked me what was it like and all that, and the most special thing about it was in a year full of all this turmoil and everything these kids have gone through, is really neat to see for a couple hours on a Saturday afternoon, a bunch of kids just be able to be kids and put a smile on their face and just have some fun. So that was, the whole day meant the world to them and me and hopefully everyone in the community, and we're just really proud of the kids and looking forward to moving on to the next season.
So Coach Fisher, I know you're downplaying your role in this, but I want to commend you because bringing a team together in the situation that you were in is no easy task. And one of the things I always loved so much about Dan was how humble he was. Every time I talked to him, it was about the kids, or it was about his staff or his family. I'm just a really tremendously humble guy. And what I can say about you is exactly the same thing. When I text you and said, congratulations on your win, just hours after you text me back, and I think the first thing you said was, thank you for giving me the opportunity. And I just thought that's exactly what Dan would have said. So thank you for what you did for our community, our school, and especially that team.
I can say it's certainly my pleasure.
Again, thanks everybody for having us on tonight. I know the girls are watching, so great job, ladies. Really proud of you, and just know that this is going to create a memory, a lifetime memory, for you. And so great job, and thank you, everybody.
And thank you all for being here tonight and sharing your successes with us. It's really a great way to get to start our meeting. So thank you for taking time to be here. Okay, we will move on to our COVID-19 update, and I will turn it over to Dr. Arnold or Superintendent Reisner.
You can turn it over to me first. Thank you so much. And so we have the first item is our local conditions, and Dr. Arnold is prepared to give that and also give it in a visual form so that it's maybe easier to digest.
All right. Good evening. I'm here to present the board with the update, as Superintendent Reisner said, on our COVID status in our building and our local and school metrics. You'll notice I did restructure this report a little bit to match the format and flow of our new dashboard, just so that we are kind of presenting that unified design. So on this first page, you'll see our COVID positives and quarantines in our schools. Today, there are 7 students positive for COVID-19 and 36 quarantining due to being identified as close contacts. I continue to believe our quarantine student numbers may be a bit low since our majority of those students are currently remote. We have been getting some quarantine reports through self-report either to teachers or to the schools. We continue to encourage and remind parents to report if we do have students who are identified as a close contact, and recommend them to do that even if that student is remote, especially important as we return to our hybrid model on Wednesday. As far as staff, there are 2 positives for COVID-19 and 13 quarantining due to close contact, and 1 pending a test result. There are graphs below the table to just show the change in positives and quarantines over the past month or so. The left graph shows these student and staff positives, and the right graph shows quarantines. Students are in orange and staff are in gray. And the chart shows the number of each category per day reporting a positive or a quarantine. If you scroll down a little bit, our next is our community metric. And our 14-day average new daily case rate is 47.3. This represents a continued decrease from our most recent school board meeting last week. And it matches the projections we discussed last week and have now moved under our override value of 60. And you'll see the 2 charts below this. The left one shows the case rate over the past month, and the right one shows the case rate throughout this school year. The yellow, orange, and red lines represent the bottom of the risk level from the metrics, the new metrics that we have, and the black line represents the level at which the community indicator overrides our school metric. So it just presents you the most recent month as well as our historical since the beginning of the school year. And if you want to scroll down a little more, we'll move on to our school metrics. As all levels are currently remote, we don't have a student absence rate because students are, even if they are ill, are able to work from home, and do school from home. The 5-day staff absence rate is shown. The high school is at 3.27%, which is green. The middle school is 5.75%, which is yellow. And the elementary is 3.36, which is green. And the graph below shows the staff absence rate for the past month. The yellow, orange, and red lines represent the bottom of that risk level from our metrics. And I've heard some confusion on how our new metrics function, specifically related to that community indicator and why it's not currently showing as orange. The red risk level is above 45, but the override value is 60. So there's almost 2 numbers within that red level. And just as a reminder for how our metrics function, if the community risk indicator is 2 levels higher than the school indicator increases by 1. If at any point the community risk arises above the override level of 60, average new cases per day, then the overall indicator moves to red, which is the recommendation to the 100% remote. So right now, our school indicators for high school and elementary are green for both staff and students, and a red community indicator moves us from green to yellow. The middle school has a green and a yellow indicator, and that red community indicator moves our middle school to an orange. Yellow and orange represent our hybrid model, which is the model we are set to return in on Wednesday. And finally, we have implemented the new CDC guidance for quarantines. And just as a reminder, in this guidance, if you're exposed to someone positive for COVID-19, your quarantine length depends on a couple things. If you have symptoms after your exposure, your quarantine length remains 14 days. And the quarantine length can be reduced if you're asymptomatic. And if you test on day 5 and the test is negative, your quarantine length is 7 days. If you can't test at day 5 or later, but remain asymptomatic, your quarantine length is 10 days. The one part of the guidance that hasn't changed is the quarantine period starts the day after your last exposure to the person with COVID-19. So if you live with that person and are unable to completely isolate, the quarantine does not start until the isolation period is over. The only reason I mention that, it is a change. It is very complex. It isn't as simple as a quarantine equals 14 days. So wanted to make sure to communicate that to the board as well as to any parents that are listening, and we will continue to help you work through that. So if you do have an exposure, please let your school know. Your school nurse or myself will follow up and make sure we can help you determine that length as well as access to testing resources. And that's the end of my report.
Eric, was there anything below?
I did have a breakdown below.
Okay.
It just from I was putting together on staff absence rate and ranges on a daily basis, just to show that pattern. I found it a little harder to read, so I hadn't initially wanted to, wasn't going to initially include it, but it is there in case anyone wants additional detail on that.
Yeah, definitely. We're really happy to see where we're headed.
Yes.
It looks a lot better than it did a week or two ago. So thank you. And then, so I'll just go ahead and go on if that's okay, Director Sheila.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so then the next item is just our normal learning enrollment numbers. Of course, we're in fully remote, but I wanted to make sure that we provided you with these numbers, and more importantly, just any other information you have. Director McStorff.
Sure. Thank you, Superintendent Reisner. As you said, these are the typical numbers that we share. You might note in the last two rows of that first chart, a lot of stability. We haven't had a lot of movement from students. I would say the majority of that is due to us all being in remote for the majority of those last 2.5 weeks. If you look at that middle table there, you can see, I think what's significant about those numbers is you can see we have been stabilizing a little bit more. That first month of school, we were moving 222 students from one learning model to the other, or from hybrid to remote, and 143 from remote to hybrid. You can see now in December, those numbers have significantly decreased. I would note on there over the weekend, so from December 4th until today, we've had an additional 39 families or students requesting to switch from hybrid back into remote. And those numbers are not captured here. This is a snapshot from the end of last week. If you want to continue to scroll, Eric, thank you. The comparables stay pretty stable. We're one of the few districts who allow for fluidity and movement in our models. And so you won't see a lot of movement from other school districts, and our numbers, as you can see, have stayed pretty stable. The last thing that I will share, Eric, if you want to scroll up, thank you, will just be a reminder. This isn't new information, but just a reminder that our ability for our families to move from hybrid to remote stays fluid or open. Families can request that change at any time. We're asking for that 5-day turnaround. For a lot of situations, we're making that happen quicker than 5 days, but it is a logistics challenge in some schedules. So we've got up to 5 days for that. And then a reminder, again, this isn't new, but just a reminder that instead of moving from remote to hybrid monthly like we've done starting on November 1st, we've changed that and we'll move it semester. And the end of first semester is January 29th. So that will be our next transition for any student who's currently in hybrid or in remote to move to hybrid. So again, not really new information, but just updates on where we're at.
Any questions?
Director McStorff, I was just going to ask for a point of clarification on that second bullet, that the request to move from remote to hybrid, pardon me, takes place at the beginning of the second semester. And then is that the only opportunity for second semester? How does that, can you just clarify for the public? How's that? Either you or Superintendent Reisner, either one of you. So
yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, we will, once second semester hits, this will be that transition, and then we're going to hold, we're going to keep that closed. So the decisions that families are making will be for that semester. although remote, moving to remote will remain fluid.
And then, sorry, did you want to add something, Superintendent Reisner? I had another question.
That's okay. I just was going to say, you know, our hope at that point is that we are back face to face, 100% face to face, and that the reason that we're closing that after that point is because we have to make sure we have the staffing. And so we can't have that fluidity of going back and forth because there's a big staffing impact. So we're planning that we'll be back face to face, and that this would be the last change because we need that staffing consistency.
I'm just going to ask for point of clarity. So you're planning for 100% face-to-face or hybrid face-to-face?
Did I say our plan that we said a few months ago was that our plan as we're moving forward, we're planning for that return to face-to-face 100%. So that's the work that the secondary schools are doing right now. The principals are working on how their system would be able to operate in that 100% return to face for second semester, because that's what I've asked them to do. So that's our hope, fingers crossed.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And then that clarification. Do you know, Director Mixdorf, it's Superintendent Reisner, either one of you may know, the number around 66% gets thrown around a lot, that we have 66% of our students not in hybrid. Is that, do you know percentage wise where
Yep, we're still there. As of, I think the numbers were given to me last Thursday or Friday. So that isn't with the over the weekend transition, but we were at 35% of our students accessing us remotely, 100% remote. And then 65% accessing us through what will be our hybrid starting on Wednesday.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate you.
Director Franzen, one other thing on that. I don't know if you have that number in front of you, but I did have a secondary principal meeting today where we talked about, I thought that the secondary number was maybe a little bit higher than that 65%. Yes, higher. Do you happen to have that, Director Mixdorf? That breakdown? No, I'm sorry, Director Mixdorf. I'm looking at Director Mixdorf. I'm so sorry.
No, you're looking at me.
I apologize.
I don't know that I have it in my notes right in front of me, but I can dig for it. I might be able to find it relatively quickly. So give me just a minute here.
Okay, no problem. And we can, if you find it later, let me know.
Yep, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you for answering those questions.
Any other questions?
I have just a follow-up on what Director Franzen was asking. So, and I'm not really clear. So we're going to be moving to hybrid on Wednesday, but it's your expectation or the goal is to be able to bring all students back in January. And those students who are eligible to be in face-to-face will only be the students who are already in hybrid okay, then I misunderstood. If you could help me understand.
Yeah, yes. No, yes, I can help you understand, and no, that is not quite correct. So the request to move from remote to hybrid or fully face-to-face. So if you're looking at, I believe it's the document that's still up, the transition will take place. We will have another open period right before the change of the semester. Director Mixdorf, I'm not positive on the date of that. I apologize. But that would be the last movement that students could move back to face so that we can do staffing. And that would occur, I think, at the end. I'll let you answer the date. I can't remember.
The date of the semester is January 29th. There'll be communication coming out on exactly when the deadline of the request and that transition will be. But then as we start second semester, that transition will have happened. That'll be our last time that students can transition from remote to hybrid or face-to-face, depending on the model that we're in.
So Director Benkin, to that second point, I think you were making, yes, we have been communicating with the secondary principals to be prepared to move back to a face-to-face model for second semester. So do the work that needs to be done so that if we're able to move back, we're ready to go and we can move back. So they are working with teams within their buildings, and I know the middle school has a team. I'm not sure the structure of secondary, but I know that that Dr. Nyberg is working on what that will mean.
But so I'm still not clear then. So I understand that. So then once, let's just say everything's great and we are able to move 100% face-to-face in the second semester, can students then still have the opportunity to transfer from remote into face-to-face, or is it closed?
Once, go ahead. Were you going to answer that?
Yeah. Once that, as that transition happens, once second semester starts, that will be the last time that a student can say, yes, I want to be on campus.
So that January 29th date, or whatever that date is if you want your student to have an opportunity to experience face-to-face instruction, you have to either move sometime now or before this January 29th cutoff, because if we are able to transition to 100% face-to-face, the students who are already in the hybrid will be the students who have access to 100% face-to-face, and that will be the only students who have the opportunity for the rest of the semester. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I think that's really important. I don't know if that was clear. I don't know. I just would really want to be sure the community understands that, because that's a really important choice for parents to have to make.
Yes, definitely. So we'll work on getting a lot of communication out in the weeks prior to that 2-week window.
And I think it would be important to clarify as well that if our local conditions grant that, right? So we get that little caveat. Hopefully, that's our hope, but we should clarify that.
Yes, I appreciate that. Thank you. Of course, as long as our numbers are going where they need to be, we're hopeful. And if our local conditions would allow us to go back face to face, we would have the plan in place, ready to go. Thank you for that. Okay, any other questions on that? All right, then the last item is just that monthly COVID expenditure report.
So you'll notice each month the amount that we're spending that's related directly to COVID is going down. I think we're probably at the level we'll be. We're at expenditures now for ongoing PPE needs, substitute costs directly related to COVID, some salary costs that we had to accommodate teachers. So I believe that we're probably going to be around that 30 to 35,000 each month.
And that's still coming out of CARES funds?
No, this is not. This is costs that we are coding to the special project code that the state has designated that we can go and ask for spending authority for. We do have things directly coded to the CARES money, and should towards the end of the year, we have some of that left. Some of this will move over to utilize those funds, but we pretty much have, what's called the gear funds is pretty much taken up with our hotspots. The CARES funding we used for 2 new nurses and the emergency coordinator. And then there's a little bit more of CARES money that has to wait until we use the first bucket of CARES. But for the most part, we've got that obligated.
Any other questions on the COVID expenditures? Okay.
I have a follow-up percentage for Director Franzen. It looks like right now at the high school, we have 39% of our students in remote and 61% are accessing us through hybrid. And at the middle school, we have 38% accessing us remotely and 62% then coming in that hybrid model.
Thanks, Director Mixdorf.
Okay, so I will go ahead and read our statement on public comments. Residents of the district, students attending the district, parents or guardians of students attending the district, and district staff members may address the board about any topic relevant to the district, whether on the current agenda or not. Those who wish to speak must sign up at the beginning of the meeting. Speaker participation is limited to 3 minutes once per item. The views and opinions of citizens addressing the board do not necessarily reflect those of the board, district administration, or staff. Speakers are to remember that Iowa law prohibits the board from discussing specific employees, students, or their performance. Student speakers will state their name and school. Others will state their name and address. And we will take any public comments right now related to the COVID-19 update only. So if you have a comment related to the COVID-19 update, please raise your hand. And it looks like we have Jason Lee, and you have been given permission to speak.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, I should turn my video on, but I'm just gonna go forward to be efficient with the time. So yeah, I'm Jason Lee. My wife is Jen Lee. We're residents of 1019 Murray Drive in Ames. And so we have 2 children currently at Fellows. And I just wanted to, first of all, thank the Fellows staff across the board, leadership, teachers, aides, support staff. They have really done a great job with our kids, our two children that are there in 5th grade. We want to make sure that they can maximize their strengths with in-person schooling. And so what I'm advocating for, what we're advocating for as a family is to, you know, specifically in our kids' case, really look at the academic achievement, academic progress, as well as mental and behavioral health issues. Look at that holistically rather than just COVID-19. Our family has been pretty severely negatively impacted by the variety of schooling, on again, off again, hybrid, online. Even though both of our boys have an IEP, it's been really inconsistent. And our sons, you know, both of them have been struggling more with increased stress and mental health and behavioral health issues. So one of them really has caused us with his behaviors to have to call the police and have several interventions over the past 2 months. He does really well when he's in person in a limited classroom setting. But whenever it's online or at home, it's nearly impossible to get any schoolwork done. He needs that high structure. His behavior is directly correlated to being home for learning, just per his words. And twice has been taken to the ER at Mary Greeley. And he had a recent placement at a children's psych unit in Des Moines, where he was just released today after 5 days of hospitalization. He just would thrive in in-person schooling. Our other son got an IEP about a week before the announcement to go 100% online learning. He went from being incredibly eager to be in the school setting with the plan that was put in place by the teachers and support staff for the first time in 3 years of public school. And that was kind of just ripped out from him 100% when the online school started. He's had a lot of difficult behaviors to manage because of not getting to do school every day. So that's the majority of our story. I know there's only a couple seconds left, but I would just advocate for in-person schooling. I'm glad to hear there's movement towards that. I would also advocate for releasing the data on academic progress and mental and behavioral health for the kids in the district, and that be to be equally considered with the COVID-19 data. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason, for sharing those comments with us. The next person is Kira Westeen, and you have been given permission to speak.
My name is Kira Westeen. We live at 2516 Camden Drive in Ames. Just wanted to share that, again, research shows and our expert leaders advise that schools should be open for 100% in-person instruction immediately. Recently, the CDC director, Robert Redfield, stated that, this was about 3 weeks ago, that schools should remain open. He said that there's now extensive data that we've gathered over the last 2 to 3 months to confirm that K-12 schools can operate with face-to-face learning, and they can do it safely and they can do it responsibly. He said that the infections we've identified in the schools, when they've been evaluated, were not acquired in the schools. When they were acquired was in the community and in the household. Furthermore, the CDC data did not find a link between the rise in cases and schools reopening in the fall. Our district failing to return to 100% in-person instruction ignores this research, it ignores the guidance given by the CDC director, and it ignores the proclamation given last week by Governor Reynolds that we need to challenge ourselves to think differently to get kids back in schools. Given the information that we have that schools are safe, anything less than an immediate return to 100% in-person instruction is truly malpractice on behalf of our district. In listening to your meeting, we have all gathered that your primary concern is for the health of the teachers and not the children. In addition to the children, I do also care deeply for the health of the teachers and wouldn't want to put them in harm's way. Teachers have a very special place in my heart. I come from a family of teachers. Both of my parents are retired public school teachers, and I am also a teacher. In fact, this fall, I taught 4 face-to-face classes to roughly 200 students. So it's not just with the research that I come to you, but it's also from my own lived experience in teaching in this pandemic that we can safely prioritize both health and education. Lastly, I hope that you've reflected on my question from last week, which was, have you gone to a store, ordered carryout from a restaurant, or perhaps ordered something online? Because if you haven't, then what you are saying is that you believe the employees in those businesses should work in the same community with the same positivity rates to serve you. And if that's the case, why do you think that the Ames School District should not be open to serve the children? Instead of a decision that reflects that you prioritize COVID mitigation over children's education, I think that we all agree that we value both COVID mitigation and education. Therefore, please consider the evidence and the guidance from the CDC that schools are safe, even given the current rates in our local community, and make a values-driven decision that reflects that we prioritize both COVID mitigation and education.
Thank you, Kara, for your comments. Our next person is Andrea, and you have been given permission to speak.
Hi, this is Andrea Spicher. I'm parent of a senior at Ames High. I just wanted to say that multiple subject matter experts have indicated that kids need to be in school and they need routine, and that schools should be open for instruction. They should be learning face-to-face. This is helpful for their mental health and wellness, and they are missing out on all of the other wonderful activities that schools provide beyond instruction. I know that you are looking at metrics as defined by the district, but as you are planning to bring students back for a second semester, I'd also like you to make sure that you keep track of what other local school districts are doing and doing successfully. As a house divided with 1 child at Ames and 2 at Gilbert, I'm very concerned about the choices that Ames Schools has made this semester. I've seen very safe and responsible instruction at other local schools, and I think Ames should really benchmark with others that are living right in our community and that are choosing other school choices because those schools are delivering face-to-face instruction. Many of these schools have successfully completed an entire semester, and Ames was deciding on a delayed start and then hybrid learning and then remote learning and then back to hybrid learning. I just asked today, as a concerned parent and member of this community, to please ensure kids get the option to go face-to-face 100% of the time for the second semester. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. And next we have Eve Leaderhouse, and you've been given permission to speak.
Thank you. I have some questions that I'm sorry, this is Eve Leaderhouse. My husband and I live at 1531 Linden. I have a daughter as a second grader in Meeker, and I have some questions that I'd like the board and administration to consider. First, the metrics that were displayed at the beginning of the meeting only show the number of students that have COVID. They didn't distinguish how many of them have also been remote. At the beginning of the year, before school was even in session, there were cases reported of students that had COVID, but school wasn't even in session. So I feel like those numbers are not showing the entire truth, how many could potentially be infecting others because they're already at home. Second, is there a commitment from the board to not change the metrics again as we go forward, and we're looking forward to 100% full time face-to-face on January 29th? One of the directors said, assuming that the conditions don't change, we would also as parents like to assume that the metrics won't change again as well. And so I would like to know if there's a commitment from the board to continue that as you've changed this one last time. 3, will you, with the cooperation from concerned parents, create a survey for Ames teachers to ask them how they feel hybrid education is working, and then release that data publicly? And then 4th, while I recognize that this is not necessarily local news, but do you know that in Japan, more people have taken their own lives by suicide in 1 month than those who have died from COVID-19 in the whole year? Their experts say the pandemic has exacerbated mental health issues due to prolonged lockdowns, isolation, unemployment and financial concerns, and a lack of school structure. I don't want to be an extremist, but these are extreme measures for our students. My daughter cries every time we tell her, I'm sorry, you can't go back to school again, especially when we just told her, you're supposed to be going back to school. This is real pain points for our families, and I need you guys to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Eve, for sharing your feedback with us. The next person is Krychek Meyer. Sorry if I butchered your name. You've been given permission to speak.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Mary Meyer, I am at 1209 Lee Street in Ames, and I have currently a son who is a 6th grader at the middle school. I have also had 3 older children who have graduated from Ames, kindergarten all the way through senior year. I just would like to express some concern and also state the fact that I come from a family of educators and nieces and nephews who are teachers. I also teach at Iowa State, and so I am an educator as well. Had to switch over with our classes to a hybrid in a short amount of time. I'm just concerned. I have a son who's very motivated and does well when he's online, but he is so much more happy, adjusted, ready to go back to school when school is in session. And his academics are much better, his mood, his frame of mind, everything. I just think we need to listen to the data, look at the research, and I follow the metrics. I see the data that's out there, and we just need to make sure that we're following what our community is doing. The local communities around us are all in school. We are not, we're just concerned more, I think, about the teachers and the staff than the well-being. When I listen to school board meetings, it's about the teachers and staffing. It's not about what's best for the students. Being the only Story County school that is online, I think is unacceptable. If other school districts can make it work, then why can't we? Are we not trying hard enough? We're social distancing at school. We're washing our hands at school. We're wearing masks at school, doing all of the things that the CDC recommends when we're indoors. So why can't we do it? Especially if 38%, and I'll speak to the middle school, especially if 38% of the kids are online, that means there are less students in school. So we should be able to do it. Kind of struggle a little bit with the feedback from the teachers. Most of them are doing a pretty good job. I know it's hard for them to adjust. And just wondering too, just a point of it, why would it take 3 full days to adjust back to a hybrid if we have been in a hybrid for close to 2 months? So just a question I had of why it would take so long to switch back and forth. Concerned about the mental health of our students, just concerned about the attitude. You hear about suicide rates, you hear about kids in counseling. And again, I'm fortunate that my child is pretty well adjusted, but I just see a definite difference when he has the opportunity to go to school, have the social interactions, and engage with other people instead of his family, which he's been doing for the past 8 months, which has been great. But I'm worried about the long-term effects of his academics. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. And next we have Betsy Waite. You've been given permission to speak.
Hey there, it's Betsy Waite, 3001 Sedgwick Street. Just a few things I want to say, some of the same things some of these people have been saying. We're hearing from CDC, Dr. Fauci, local medical professionals that the safest place for these kids to be is in school. The online approach is failing our kids on so many levels. Kids are isolated from others at home, caring for siblings, can't keep up with their schoolwork, failing classes. One teacher talked to me this week, mentioned that she had a few students that hadn't logged in for 5 to 6 weeks. I'm concerned how online learning is affecting our youth's mental health now and long term. Kids are feeling stressed, overwhelmed, angry, and frustrated. Some have support at home and some don't. Kids are not able to run at recess, play in PE for their outlet, be with their peers, their teachers. If they can't cope with these emotions, we cannot risk them turning to unhealthy outlets such as self-harm. Teachers are working so hard for these kids. I appreciate all my daughter's teachers so much. She really enjoys them, and I don't think it's at all a lack of trying. Speculation is not reality. We can't control what is happening outside of the schools, but we can inside. The question that we should be asking, is it safe for our kids to be in schools? The data says yes. The data in our schools shows that COVID is not spreading within the schools itself. The national data also shows that they are not super spreaders. Therefore, instead of fixating on the community spread and choosing to close schools, keep schools closed, because some may or may not have seen pictures of people at parties, ISU kids out and about, holiday gatherings. Why are we not focusing on the science and the data that school is one of the safest places kids and staff can be with the proper COVID strategies and mitigation in place? As of this Wednesday, the goal of this district has got to be to keep these kids in school. A couple quick questions. If we have 65% of the kids in school, why wouldn't we at least be trying to go 4 days a week? That would be a question of mine. I also have 2 kids in 2 different districts, and my son goes to Gilbert, and it's working wonderfully so far. And Ames has less kids in school every day, so I think it would work just as well. Consider the overall health of our children and not just the numbers. The harm of these kids not attending school at this point far outweighs the virus risks. One number that I'm hoping will also be reconsidered is the 15 cases and under case count in Story County for our kids to go back full time. I don't see how this is even attainable or realistic in a county of 100,000 people. The kids are so excited to get back this week. Caroline has been bouncing off the walls and she is so jazzed. So I appreciate the opportunity for them to get back. She will only go to school 3 times before Christmas, which at this point I will take, but please don't take this away from them again. What little time they have left this semester, keep them in school, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. Ginny, you have been given permission to speak.
Thank you. My name is Jenny Mitchell. I live at 1416 Boone Street in Boone, and I open enroll my children in the Ames Community School District. I want my kids in school, and obviously so do a whole bunch of other kids. I just am so confused as to why the school board is deciding metrics on when we are going to go back into school. I know that there are some members of the school board that have their children in 100% remote learning. So what I see is that those school board members who have chosen to have their kids in 100% remote learning, they are voting with their personal choice, not in the best interest of the community and the schools. They are also more concerned with the staff and not the kids. Right before Thanksgiving break, I emailed my kindergartner's teacher to let her know that he would not be in school on Monday and Tuesday. because we are so stressed out. We cannot do this anymore. I cannot do this anymore. I have taken personal time off of work for a month so that I can be home with my child. And I am so stressed out, and so is he. Today, I couldn't even get him to do anything online. It was ridiculous. The amount of time and effort that we have to put in to get him to do any of these activities on a computer is not right. That's not, I mean, that's not what I should be doing with my day. I need to work. And so do hundreds of other parents. So I let his teacher know this, and I got a response back from the principal saying that COVID is in control. What a ridiculous response. The people who are actually in control are the school board members and the teachers and the staff. Why are you guys making the decision to keep our kids out of school? That is all I have to say.
Thank you, Jenny. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on our COVID-19 update? Okay. I don't see anyone raising their hand. So we will move on to our discussion items. And our first item is our board committee update. So are there any committees that would like to provide an update?
The Equity Committee has an update, but it will be long. So I'd like to let anybody else go first.
I believe the Equity Committee might have been the only committee.
Well, then there you go.
I think we're the only one that's met since the last meeting.
Well, that makes it easy. Okay. So I'm actually going to do something a little unusual. I'm going to give a statement and then I'm going to give the update. So, and it's written down, so you'll see me reading. That'll hopefully help me stay on track. I'd like to provide some context for the Equity Committee update I'm about to give. A few days ago, the Ames Tribune published an article about the completion of the literature review the Equity Committee is undertaking around the use of school resource officers, or SROs, in Ames schools. While I quibble with the way the article framed the discussion, the main thing that people should take away is that our review of the literature was the first step in a multi-step process. These past few months have brought challenges and concerns that I have never before experienced in my time on the board. I feel that COVID has shaken our community in profound ways. I fear that the work around SROs is coming at a time when everyone is craving consistency, normalcy, and the desire to at least feel safe. I want to acknowledge the broader environment in which we are operating and assure our community that the Equity Committee is working thoughtfully to ensure that the Ames Community School District is providing the best learning environment for all students during this challenging moment in our nation's history. The literature review was designed to provide an evidence-based understanding of the impact of SROs to guide our work objectively. While the literature review is complete, the committee's work is not. We are not ready to make recommendations, but I already see outrage over the findings and the suggestion that the literature is wrong or should simply be ignored in favor of anecdotal stories from our students. The primary job of educators is to prepare students for a life in a complicated society. To see comments on social media and read emails from parents that eschew decades of empirical research in favor of personal ideology or myth-making is disappointing. How do we ask our students to invest in their educations when you dismiss the results of that education with personal attacks or doubling down on personal opinions and individual experiences that are not based in science? Just as the Equity Committee did not have a knee-jerk reaction to the emotional plea of our teachers 2 years ago to remove SROs from our schools because of their beliefs, the Equity Committee will not engage in a knee-jerk reaction to emotional pleas to keep SROs because of people's personal beliefs. Our work will remain guided by evidence, not passion. While I don't usually feel the need to announce my credentials or defend my motivations, I do feel the need to do so in this situation based on the feedback that I've received from our community. I'm an associate professor with tenure at a Research One university whose area of research is how the justice system responds to complex offenders and problems. I teach in a criminal justice studies program where I train many people who go into law enforcement. I have family members who serve in law enforcement, some who even work as SROs. I have met and liked each of our 3 most recent SROs. I am not anti-police, and the committee is not a reflection of my personal will. With regard to the current review, the bottom line is I would have reported whatever the literature said. If the literature was resoundingly in favor of SROs in our schools, that's what I would have reported. If the literature was mixed, I would have reported that, but it isn't. The literature is overwhelming in its conclusion that SROs are helpful in high crime schools. Otherwise, they have two effects. Either they are statistically no different than schools without SROs, or evidence shows that schools who use them demonstrate a host of unintended and negative consequences that are bound up in larger issues related to school climate. Some parents have demanded that we survey our former and current students in the hopes that their anecdotal reports will overcome a mountain of empirical research. This is unnecessary because Ames is not unique. We do not live in a bubble that protects us from the problems that we see in thousands of other districts and countries, in other districts across the country. As is evidenced by our equity reports, panorama surveys, and state report cards, we are not immune from the realities of complex psychological, sociological, political, and cultural dynamics in the learning space. If we did survey the students, I would expect findings similar to what the literature repeatedly shows. Even when students like their specific SROs, schools still demonstrate negative outcomes and unhealthy climates when they are present. The issue isn't about whether or not students like SROs, but rather the unseen impacts that come into the school environment with their very presence. So surveying the students doesn't help us understand the problem any better. As the Equity Committee continues its work, I ask everyone in our community to understand that research often conflicts with our personal beliefs and experiences. But just because you had an uncle who smoked for 50 years and never got cancer does not invalidate the research that demonstrates that smoking causes cancer. The same is true here. Whatever your personal thoughts and experiences are about SROs in our schools, those ideological positions do not take priority over decades of scientific research on the topic. The issue is being discussed in the Equity Committee because it is our charge to ensure equitable educational opportunities for all students. One of our main tasks is to help the district address the longstanding disproportionality we see in our academic and disciplinary outcomes. The district has invested thousands of dollars and spent hundreds of hours addressing these longstanding disparities. I have sat around countless tables and witnessed people's jaws drop when our disparities are laid out in black and white before their eyes. I have heard people exclaim, "How did we get here?" While the presence of SROs in our schools is not the reason for these disparities, to ignore the evidence that their presence contributes to the problems we are trying to address as a district would be a dereliction of our duty and inconsistent with our obligation to provide all of our students with the state-of-the-art and evidence-based education and school environment that they deserve. I ask the community to be willing to have their thinking challenged, to support conclusions from evidence-based research, and to encourage us in our work to unravel a complicated web of practices that we may find are no longer in the best interest of our students. For the update, the Equity Committee met on December 2nd. In that meeting, I shared results from a literature review that was being undertaken about the efficacy of SROs in our schools. The review included 17 articles from 2015 to 2020, which included reviews of studies from 1994 to 2020. If you recall in the last update, I said that I was about halfway through the initial stack of articles. I finished reading the remaining articles and they had mostly just confirmed what I had already read. So there wasn't any groundbreaking findings to highlight in this summary. However, there was one meaningful contribution that I would like to highlight. It's going to be confusing. I'll send you, I'll put it in the notes. Most of the research focuses on the impact on students and school culture if there is an SRO present. But since most districts use SROs differently, the impact was really hard to discern. A 2019 study in crime and delinquency conducted a national longitudinal study to examine the effects of SRO in their relation to their impact on school crime. Their study identified 3 empirically derived subtypes of SROs and examined how these different role profiles may be differently associated with outcomes related to school crime. First, the study measured SRO engagement in 7 activities that align with the National Association of School Resource Officer mission. They measured security enforcement and school patrol, maintaining school discipline and safety, coordination with local police and emergency teams, identifying problems in the school and seeking solutions, training teachers and staff in school safety and crime prevention, mentoring students, and teaching law-related education courses or training students. Based on whether or not the SRO engaged, how much they engaged in those 7 activities, latent class analysis supports the placement of SROs into one of 3 roles. What they call a low engagement SRO, which is one who doesn't really do much of those 7 activities. The full triad SRO, which is one who demonstrates thorough engagement across all of those 7 activities, and what they refer to as a reactionary SRO. And that's an SRO that primarily is engaged in kind of law enforcement activities from that particular list, not necessarily the pro-social community building pieces. Among those 3 officers, what you find is when you look at the distinction between infractions recorded in the school and then infractions that are reported to the police, what you find is differences based on the role that the SRO has in the school. For low engagement SROs, there's no difference in infractions reported in the school or reported to the police if that person is, other than schools that don't already have one. Let me say that again because that was confusing. There's no difference in infractions recorded by the school or reported to the police than schools who don't have an SRO. And so the recommendation from the research is if you have a low engagement SRO and they have no difference than schools with no SROs, why do you have them? Why are you paying for them? They're not doing anything. For schools that have reactionary SROs, what we find is that those schools actually have more infractions reported in the schools, but not as many of those infractions being reported to police. And the reason you have more infractions being reported in the schools is because those officers are basically engaging in straight law enforcement. And so they're doing what they do well is that they're identifying activities. The problem with these particular SROs is that they tend to be the kind of SROs that will identify infractions that are more subjective. So this is where you get into the SROs that are citing people for being disruptive or non-compliant or that kind of stuff. The research says this type of SRO is the most problematic. So when we get to the full triad SRO, we have very interesting and complex findings. For the full triad SRO, what we find is that in those schools actually report less offenses than schools who have reactionary officers, but those schools report more offenses to the police than schools who have a reactionary officer. And so while these schools have less crime, they actually have more police reports. And the reason that the research suggests that's happening is because this officer is fully integrated into the school space and everybody likes the officer, the teachers like the officer, the principals like the officers. And so because they like the officer, they view law enforcement as a legitimate way to address problematic behaviors in the school. And so the relationship between the teachers, the administrators, and the officers are actually fueling increased police engagement from the students in situations that normally police would not have been involved. So in total, of both reports that I've submitted, the research demonstrates that regardless of their roles in schools, use of SROs come with a host of negative unintended consequences that impact the overall school experience for students, even when students and staff like the specific officer. To say it another way, whether or not students like the officer is irrelevant in whether or not the SRO presence negatively impacts the school environment. Just like everything else, no piece of the school system operates in a vacuum. The ways in which students experience the climate of a school is really complicated. So the overall impacts to me seem paradoxical. And I think that's part of what makes this complicated and hard to explain. So in looking at the research as a whole, SROs demonstrate either no impact or negative impact on school safety and climate. Students report feeling safe in the beginning of the year with an SRO in the building, but report feeling less safe as the year goes on. The more contact students have with the SRO, the more students like the officer. But the more contact they have with the officer, the more disconnected they report feeling from the school generally. That has a host of negative unintended consequences, such as school non-completion, which some refer to as dropout, or excessive absenteeism, all things that we see in our own data and have been working for years to address. The literature does not know why this happens, but offers 3 possible explanations. The first is it is suggested that students develop unconscious feelings in the school, that the school is unsafe in response to SRO presence. So it's basically an implicit association between police and crime. So you see a person in a police uniform or an SRO, you just subconsciously feel unsafe because that's the association that we make, is that police are for crime. This is a direct quote from one of the articles. This is not my language. Students, so quote, students who have witnessed other students be arrested for less serious offenses may feel less connected at school if they have recurrent fear or stress about making minor disturbances that may result in their own arrest. So basically, even if the student doesn't have a negative interaction with the SRO, but they see something happening or they hear about something happening, it makes them feel anxious that they might be punished in a similar way, and it impacts their ability to become fully connected in the school environment. And third, the NASRO mission, NASRO stands for National Association of School Resource Officers. The NASRO mission of providing education and mentoring is potentially fueling school disconnection in unintended ways. Finally, we're fielding emails from parents advocating that we keep using SROs because of how many calls they receive for assistance in our district. It's important to understand that those parents are correct, but they are also highlighting the way in which we have been misusing our SROs. Through the committee's work, it was stated that we hired a second SRO in response to requests from elementary school principals. Because we don't have a scourge of crime at our elementary schools, and we know about the disciplinary challenges we were experiencing prior to COVID at that particular level, it seems likely to assume that what some might actually interpret as need is what the literature refers to as outsourcing discipline. Because schools generally do not have appropriate funds to address mental health or social emotional needs, many districts have instead utilized SROs for this function, something that we see playing out in our society as a whole. It's necessary to note that NASRO specifically denounces this practice and says that SROs should not be used in this way. In effect, they shouldn't be as busy as they are. Moving forward, the committee will meet again on January 13th at 3 o'clock to begin discussing evidence-based ways to respond to school disruptions and we'll try to figure out how we piece this research into what that response looks like. And if there are other committee members who would like to comment, I would appreciate their additions.
I would like to say that was a very interesting discussion that we had. I was very surprised by all of the research and what came out of that, because I went into that thinking that they were there to help, and building the relationships would be very helpful for the students and all of that. And to find out that my own personal beliefs were way off, it was a bit of a shock. And based on the research, I had said, why do we have SROs? Right? And that's still part of what we're figuring out, is why do we have SROs? What are we trying to accomplish with the SROs? We still have more conversations that we need to have with principals, with other people within the district, and also with our partnership with the police department. So we are nowhere near the end of making any sort of a recommendation.
Yeah, and I will echo what I think Director Bankin, you gave an excellent summary of the research here that I hope is helpful for people to kind of clarify some of the things that came out in that article. And Director Perez, I agree with what you said, that that was the big takeaway after all of the discussion, was that we are nowhere near making a recommendation, that we have more partners that we want to involve and more questions that we are looking at. So this was kind of the step one, as Director Bankin said. All right, are there questions from the rest of the board on the board committee update?
I just want to thank the Equity Committee and Director Bankin. This is a huge amount of work, and but as you explained, it's very important, and I support the work that you're doing. And I know we've been receiving emails, and but this is important work. So I support you and what you're doing. And I wonder if it's a question, but since you're still kind of working on this, I wonder if you'll get to the point to figure out what kind of SRO we have, which one of those three. So that was my question. And I assume you don't have it, that it is to come.
You know, that's a good question. So one of the things that came out, and I didn't have a chance to do the minutes, because I think they were due, like, you know, before they were due that next day. I didn't get to them. But Erin Meek is going to be sending out a survey to the principals, because I think even the principals were like, how are we using these officers? I don't think there's clarity, because I don't think there's any consistency. And so she's going to be developing a matrix, or excuse me, a questionnaire. Erin, you're on. Why don't I just let you say what you're doing?
Sure, absolutely. Yes, we've been working on a survey, or not a survey really, sort of tracking measure for our principals and our administrators to keep track of their interactions with our school resource officers. And so of their interactions with our school resource officers and what they utilize them for. It was also brought up potentially to have a measure for our school resource officers to have a sort of form for them to keep track of what they're doing in our buildings. And that's something that we can look into certainly as well, to have a little bit better of an understanding of kind of what their day looks like.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. The next discussion item is the 2021-2022 board meeting schedule. And I was trying to compare this to the previous one. I think there's still some discussion about the date for a retreat. Otherwise, were there any other changes on this that I missed?
I just had one quick question. I noticed on and it was this way, I think this year too, although it didn't matter because we didn't have any elections, but in the November, which you've got pulled up, thank you. So there is an election before that November 8th meeting, but is it due to canvassing that the candidates don't get sworn in until the 22nd, which that's when our organizational meeting, is that the reason?
Right.
Chris, I see that you unmuted.
Yeah, I inquired of the county auditor when the canvass would happen, and the canvass isn't happening until the 9th. And so we wouldn't actually have certificates of elections for new board members or returning board members until after that canvass. So it would be after our board meeting.
Okay, thank you. That was all I noticed when I went through them.
Thanks for that question. Anything else on the proposed board schedule? All right. Are there any comments from the community on our discussion items, particularly the two things under discussion items here? Angela Shaw, you've been given permission to speak.
Hello, my name is Angela Shaw and I live at 5411 Tennessee Street here in Ames. And I'm speaking on behalf of the Ames Youth and School Action Team, or ASAT. We were established in 2017, and we are a nonpartisan, apolitical group of concerned citizens across Ames whose intent is to shine light on racial and ethnic disparities that occur within the Ames Community School District. Equity in education is a concept that has been loosely used within the Ames Community School District. Equity in education requires putting systems in place that ensure that every child has equal access to high quality education. It requires the identification of privilege, assumptions, and biases when making decisions, as well as identification and assignment of resources to students in need. Robert J. Jackal and others have researched the connection between equity and social emotional learning and have found that environments that support social emotional learning is a foundation for an equitable school environment. The foundation of a healthy environment is having consistency, routine, and connection. No one can dispute that there are academic and interdisciplinary disparities within the school district, and we want to highlight some concerns. We have concerns about the lack of consistency and routine within educational delivery models, which can have a negative impact on achievement. We encourage the board to prioritize consistency and routine when making decisions on the educational model. We are also concerned with the lack of systematic approaches to academic interventions when it comes to our students, and wonder about what strategies are being employed on a systematic basis, and are they research-based? We're also concerned about the teacher and staff support, because these are the means to eliminate achievement gaps. We encourage the district to listen and support our teachers as they balance COVID mitigation and address academic disparities. Another issue that ASAT would like to address is the student resource officers. Ames Community School District says that they do research-based decision-makings, and there's a connection between a healthy environment and the research. Research has shown that SROs have a negative effect when present in the school, regardless of the purpose that they're in the school. We hope, ASAT members, that you eliminate SROs from the schools immediately to support these findings and thus make the environment healthy. We want the social emotional health of the students as well as equity to combine to ensure that academic achievement, or this achievement gap, is shrunken in the next report cards that we see. Thank you.
You're muted, Sabrina.
Thanks, Gina. Steph shares. Angela, thank you for sharing that feedback with us. And Steph, you've been given permission to speak.
Good evening, members of the board and district. My name is Steph Shares, and I live at 905 Vermont Circle. I am speaking tonight on behalf of the Anti-Racist Collaborative, ARC, of Ames. ARC of Ames is a group of anti-racist educators in the Ames community. We are individually and collectively committed to dismantling racist and inequitable educational systems and structures. We vow to seek out, speak out, and act out against inequitable policy and practice in the Ames educational community. We commit to continuously deepen our understanding of anti-racism through centering the work and voices of Black and Brown educators and activists, and we promise to support, check, and challenge each other as we engage in this important work. We are here tonight to stand in solidarity with ASAT and the Iowa State University Black Faculty and Staff Association in calling for data-driven, research-based decisions in regards to student resource officers, SROs, in the Ames Community School District. We want to be clear that this call is not a critique of any current or past SROs. There are many positives each of these individuals has brought to the Ames community. However, we also know the importance of looking at systemic impacts of SROs rather than at anecdotal individual examples and impacts. In conclusion, we have two asks. Our first is of the district. We ask the district to use current research and data to support and uphold its commitment to equity. If the district doesn't currently have data, then it needs to be collected. Our second ask is of the Ames community. This topic is very complex and nuanced. Regardless of where you stand on this issue, we ask that you express your viewpoints in thoughtful, responsible, and safe ways. Threats, personally disparaging comments, or any other dehumanizing communication is unacceptable and does not model the skills our children need to navigate the complex society they will enter into as adults. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Steph. Is there anyone else who would like to comment on our discussion items? Okay, and we've heard from several participants already, but I will go ahead and open our public forum. Is there anyone who would like to speak as part of the public forum? And this can be on any topic. Okay, I don't see any hands raised. Oh, do we have Steph Shares?
Hi, it's me again, Steph Shares. I'm still at the same address. This is not wearing my ARC hat. This is me wearing my teacher hat. I still had 1 minute left. I noticed I only used 2 minutes. I did hear earlier in this meeting a community member asking why teachers need 2 to 3 days to prepare for the hybrid return. I wanted the community to have a chance to hear from a teacher. I don't speak for every teacher, but I speak for myself. Every single moment that every single student is in our building is accounted for due to contact tracing protocols. I literally have to reassign each and every student a seat for each and every period for every cohort. I then upload that data to the AMS drive in case I get COVID and someone else has to teach my class. This is in addition to the 15 to 20 hours overtime per week past contract time I've been working since August. I just wanted to share that with the community. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Steph. Anyone else who would like to speak as part of our public forum? Amy Schmidt. You've been given permission to speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. I'm Amy Schmidt and I live at 4008 Cochrane Parkway. I just wanted to talk for probably 1 minute. I won't take my full 3, but it seems like you heard from one subset of parents tonight, and I wanted you to hear from at least one other voice. I just wanted to thank the Ames Community School District administrators, teachers, staff, and the school board members. You guys were unknowingly placed in an impossible situation, trying to balance the health and well-being of students and teachers during a worldwide pandemic. And in my opinion, you have made the best decisions possible with the information you had available at the time. Since we don't live in a world where students can attend in-person learning without teachers, teachers' health must also be a factor. I heard earlier an individual state that this semester has been a failure. I disagree. We have used this semester to teach our 4 children flexibility, compassion, independence, and other life skills that will help them both now and for the rest of their lives, in addition to them learning their school materials via hybrid and online learning. I sympathize with the families for whom this model of schooling hasn't worked. For my family, it has, while my husband and I are both working full-time, and felt it important for you to hear an opposing viewpoint. Again, thank you for all your time and energy. It has not been overlooked or taken for granted.
Thank you, Amy, for sharing that feedback with us. Any other members of the public wishing to speak? Okay, seeing none, I will go ahead and close our public forum. And we will move on to our consent items, and I will entertain a motion.
I move the board approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, moved by Perez and seconded by Bankin. Discussion, or I guess Superintendent Reisner, gifts to the district.
I promise I'm coming. I lost my unmute button there for a minute. Okay, so I pulled it up on a different document here so I could see it better. I don't have my glasses on. So gifts to the district, Mary Greeley Medical Center, Knights of Columbus, Renewable Energy Group, Ames Rotary Club, Jody Clement, Cephal Sigma Gamma Rho. That's it.
Thank you. Okay, it has been moved by Perez, seconded by Bankin to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Passes 7-0. Moving on to our action items. We have the first one is depository banks.
I move the board approve the depositories and designated maximum amounts for deposits as listed below.
Second.
Okay, moved by Beerbaum, seconded by Bankin. And this will be a roll call vote. So I will call out your name. Benkin.
Aye.
Beerbaum.
Aye.
Colton.
Aye.
Franzen.
Aye.
Lankaitis.
Aye.
Perez.
Aye.
Shields Cook, aye. Passes 7-0. And I apologize that I didn't give any update on what this is. If you didn't attend a previous meeting, this was something that was discussed at a previous meeting and it's now up for approval. So I apologize that I didn't ask for a discussion on that. Okay. Moving on to the board and staff items. Are there items from the board?
I just wanted to thank the district for bringing the 3 celebrations to the agenda tonight. It is, and they were very different, had quite variety. So thank you for bringing them to us so that we can celebrate the community involvement and impact of our school district, our school districts and students' impact on the community. And then last but not least, but the ways in which our student athletes and our staff have represented us. So thank you for bringing those to us so we can celebrate with all of the individuals involved in those.
I just want to share something with the board and the community as a whole. I have been reflecting a lot on the messages that we get, right? We've been getting lots of emails, lots of people talking on the public forums and social media. And I want to let the community know that I understand it. I understand where everyone is coming from, and I can discern some of those messages are more hurtful than others, but I can discern that it's a parent advocating. So I understand that. I really do. However, there's one piece that I feel that is important for me to address. When I hear comments or I read comments about board members' whereabouts or potential whereabouts or where they have been or where they could possibly go, those comments, as a woman, they make me feel unsafe. As an immigrant, those comments make me feel unsafe. As a person that speaks English as a second language, makes me feel unsafe. I don't know the intent of those comments, as if, how dare I go out or go to the store? But I am telling you right now, they make me feel unsafe. So I just wanted to share that with my fellow board members, the district and the community. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Director Colton. Anyone
I guess
else?
on a comment kind of related to that, I would say, I know we have gotten a lot of feedback from all parts of the community, and I think Director Colton said it there, where it's clear that parents are advocating for their kids and for what their kids' particular needs are. And I have no problem with that. I do think that some things, as Director Colton already addressed, are rather problematic. But the thing I'd say is, to the board members, really, this is to everybody on the board, I know that we might not all completely agree on all the discussions, but I value the fact that everybody's been willing to have those discussions. And these are massively hard decisions. There are no obvious decisions. As I was describing to somebody, who knew when we got on the board we would be trying to deal with, do we care more about students or do we care more about staff safety? I mean, both of those are important. And that's just 2 of the items of the 10 that go into those decisions, right? So we might not all agree. And, in the last board meeting, we had a split decision. I don't hold anything about that against any board member. I think there were 7 different opinions, right? And that's completely fine, and I would expect it in this situation. So I value the members of the board, and I know we're all going through the same thing, and we're all dealing with the same stress and the same messages and feedback. And, the emails I get are nowhere near as much as the stuff I get from my own kids advocating for different things. So I deal with that every day. And I can tell you the way today went, wow, that was something. But we'll see. But I just wanted to thank the rest of the board members here publicly for all the hard work you're doing on this. This is a tough time and a tough topic, and I value everything you guys are putting into it.
I wasn't going to speak. I know we all, because we do have another meeting, but I think Alan made a really important point, and I do want to second that, because I was someone who did not vote in favor of the motion that was made. I want to clarify that does not mean that I am now not on board. I think one of the strengths of this board is that we respect the decision that is made, because in all my time on the board, with all the different board members that I've worked with, I have never once had a suspicion that the members of the board were not there to support our students, families, and our community. Every single person here wants what's best for our students, and the discussion is always only around how do we get to best. And so just because I wasn't part of the group that was the majority doesn't mean that I now don't support the decision. I'm 100% behind. This is what we're doing, and I encourage our community to support our teachers and our administrators as we move towards this learning model. It's what we need to do as a community.
I appreciate those comments. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to items from the superintendent.
Thank you. So the first item that I have two quick things to talk about. The first one was just wanted to put that out there. I know we thought last year about doing some type of retreat style work session. Retreat is probably not the best word for it. Basically just a long work session right here in Ames, not going anywhere, but just a longer period of time where potentially I could have some department reports, things that just would be easier to do at the end of the year or right before the start of the next year. And I know it does say on here in July, but my thought is either June or August. And so I was wondering, thinking of maybe a 4-hour block of time. I just wanted to throw it out there and then have JD follow up with maybe a document to try and get feedback from you all in terms of whether that's something you would like to have and or what the best time of day of week, that type of thing. So we'll follow up with that. And then the other, any questions on that? First of all, since it's on here, we can discuss it. Okay. And then the second thing I just wanted to put out there, I've had several parents reach out to me asking about whether or not we would have an online learning program or a remote program next year. I wanted to just put out there that my staff and I have been and are working on that. And that we're really excited about the opportunity that might be there. So we will bring the board more information and also the Teaching and Learning Committee. But we have been working on that and will continue to do so. So look for information coming your way probably in January. For sure in January.
I probably can't ask a question, can I? How about I'll ask the question and just put it in, because does that require state approval or will it be different? I'll just put that into a thought. How's that?
And a thought that I have on that is that no, it does not require state approval if we are not, this is information that we received actually today. It does not require state approval if we are not opening it to outside students for open enrollment. So it would be state approval needed if we are opening it to students from other districts for open enrollment. Dr. Hawkins, do you want to say anything about that, or did I capture?
You captured it perfectly.
Good thought.
Then we will look quickly at the board planning calendar. And it looks like our next meeting is January 11th. And it still feels to me a little bit like things are a little bit up in the air. We don't really know. We might have more meetings than what's on here.
You never know. That's all I would highlight, just our next meeting.
Okay. Then I will entertain a motion. Well, before I do that, we'll just let the public know that we are going to move into our work session after this. But for our regular meeting, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move
I
to
move we
adjourn.
adjourn.
Second.
Okay, moved by Franson, seconded by, I know I saw Bankin, so because her, no? Was it Linkitis?
Michelle got it. Michelle got it.
Okay. Moved by Beerbohm, seconded by Linkitis. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Okay, passes 7-0. And we are staying in the same Zoom, correct?
Would it be possible to take like just a 3-minute quick break?
Yes, I was just going to say that. And then we will take a 3-minute break to refill our drinks and all of that good stuff. So we will be back in this same call in 3 minutes. I think we're just waiting for Director Colton. Oh, and there she is.
Sorry, I just heard my name. Sorry, I'm here.
No, I was just making sure everybody's here. So I think if we have all of the district staff that we need, we would be ready to begin. And so I suppose we have to, do we should call this to order? Okay, so I will call to order our work session for December 7th of the Ames Community School District Board of Directors and entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Move we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, it's moved by Franzen, seconded by Beerbaum. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Passes 7-0. And Director Colton, will you please read our purpose statement?
Happy to. The Ames Community School District commits to equity and access that empowers every individual to reach their full personal and educational potential.
Thank you. Then I will turn it over to Superintendent Reisner for our discussion items.
Thank you so much. And I think one of the most exciting things is that we are going to talk about priorities and goals tonight that are not COVID related. So I think we're all probably looking forward to this discussion. So to start with, I just wanted to review our agenda tonight and talk about the outcomes really quick. Thanks for pulling that up. I appreciate it. So just when really our session outcomes for tonight are agreement on areas of emphasis for the 2021 school year, and in the end, the assignment of the board committee members or a recommendation for or agreement for the committee members. Our policy requires us to review that yearly as a board. And so we will do that tonight. And I wanted to just, before we get started, tell you that some of our, as you can probably imagine, some of our dates and things that we had anticipated in our initial benchmarking for goals, we will be adjusting because we've been in COVID and had different learning models. And so we'll adjust some of those dates and we'll talk about that a little bit tonight. But before we start, I just wanted to really quickly run through, some of you may remember, I began training around that meeting practices around lean management. And so I took some of their recommended effective meeting practices and just modified in terms of, I broke them down. They have a lot more, but I picked out some of the ones that I thought kind of would help us for tonight. And so just want to give you about 1 minute just to read through those effective meeting practices, and then ask any clarifying questions if you have any, or if not, we can go forward after about a minute. So go ahead and take a minute to read through those. Okay, I wasn't keeping track of time, but hopefully that was close to a minute. Any questions on any of those before we get started? Okay, they're not necessarily norms like you may be familiar with, because we haven't really agreed upon them as a group, but they were just ones that we kind of thought might be good to just go through a little bit. And so that is what the purpose of that was for. I'm excited for you to get to hear from Dr. Jones and participate in this anchor activity. This anchor activity is one that our leadership team, our principals and directors, we meet weekly, and at the beginning of every meeting, we spend the first 15, 20 minutes on equity-based activity or critical consciousness. And so this was one that we felt really spoke to tonight's activities. So Dr. Jones, I'm going to go ahead and turn that over to you.
Good evening, everyone. So like Superintendent Reisner said, I would like to invite you to participate in this anchor activity that we also would call the inclusion activity, just to kind of anchor our learning for tonight. So the purpose of an inclusion activity, just to remind everyone, is to get us focused on the work before us tonight, to get all voices in the room or virtual space, to see who we are in relationship with each other and the content. So what I ask you to do is to listen to this short story, and then at the end, I will actually respond to 2 reflection questions to help us focus on the work that we have before us tonight. So I have the story here on the next slide. Could you change to the next slide, please? Thank you. So the story is titled, And How Are the Children? And it reads, among the many fabled and accomplished tribes of Africa, no tribe was considered to have warriors more fearsome or more intelligent than the mighty Maasai. It's surprising, then, to learn the traditional greeting passed among the Maasai warriors, Kasarian and Gary. One would always say to each other, and what it meant was, and how are the children? It is still the traditional greeting of the Maasai, acknowledging the high value the Maasai placed on the children's well-being. Even warriors with no children of their own would always give the traditional answer, all the children are well. This meant, of course, that peace and safety prevail. The priorities of protecting the young and the powerless are in place, that the Maasai people had not forgotten their reason for being, their proper function, and their responsibilities. Next slide. All the children are well means life is going smoothly, and even the most vulnerable, the children, are valued and cared for. It means the daily struggles of existence, even among people in poverty, include the proper care of the young and defenseless. I wonder how it might affect our consciousness of our own children's welfare if we took to the greeting each other in the same daily question, and how are the children? I wonder if we heard that greeting passed along to each other a dozen times a day, whether it would begin to make a difference in the reality of how children are thought of and cared for in this country. I wonder what it would be like if every adult among us, parents, guardians, and people without children, felt an equal weight of responsibility for the daily care and protection of all the children in our town, in our state, and in our country. I wonder whether we could truly say without hesitation, the children are well. Yes, all the children are well. So I have on the next slide, just a self-reflection. So take 2 minutes and write down a response to these 2 questions. So take 1 minute per question, and just to jot down some quick reflections and thoughts. The first question is, how do we, as a culture of schooling in the US, typically respond to this question? And how are the children? Question number 2, we educators live and work in a culture that does not value children for who they are, but for what they can achieve. How can we as a school system work to reverse this mindset and humanize our educational system? So let's take approximately 2 minutes to respond, to write a short reflection of those 2 questions. Okay, please wrap up your thoughts for the first question. If you can, shift over to question number 2. Okay, and that's time. I would like to ask 2 brave participants. So if you notice, we have 2 minutes to write down response to 2 questions, and I would like to ask, just open up the space for 2 brave participants to share out what you wrote in your self-reflection. So I want to open this space for it.
I spent too much time on question 1, so
all right,
I'd be happy to say what I wrote down for that. Everybody tends to ask, how are you doing? And the generic response, regardless of how you're doing, is, I'm doing well. So I would expect that the majority of people would answer that the children are well. I don't feel it would actually provide an accurate portrayal of how the children actually are, because people are so used to being asked how they're doing, they answer with a generic response. And most of the time, I'm not gonna lump everybody together, but a lot of times when you ask, how are you doing? A lot of people that are asking don't actually want to know. It's more of a greeting. So that's where I was going with that.
Thank you, Director Perez. Someone else, please share.
I'll share.
Go
ahead, Alan.
Go for it.
Okay, so for the first one, in terms of as a culture of schooling, when we look at how are the children, I feel like we are looking at test scores, grades, assessments, academic achievement, and that tends to be what we're looking at. For the second question, I wrote down several things here. So I was thinking about the importance of providing flexibility in education, caring for students' basic needs first, because we know that they can't learn if they don't have their basic needs met, which also means caring for the families. So it needs to be a community-wide effort. It can't be something that just the schools are doing, because you can't solve that by just focusing on the students. And then I also wrote individualized learning when possible. So looking at things like smaller class sizes. I've heard so much from teachers this year about how great it's been having that individual attention for students, and removing barriers wherever we can.
Perfect. Thank you, Director Shields Cook. Director Beerbaum always provides space for a +1. We usually have a +1 in the room. So Director Beerbaum.
I am often a +1. My wife would always say I'm the +1.
There we go.
On the first one, what I started thinking about, I actually put it in terms of a little bit of what's going on with COVID. And when people have been asking this about my kids, or when people have been asking me about just kids at Ames, I don't know if it's because of COVID or not, but I've been focusing a lot more on saying they're either happy or they're sad or they're scared or things like that. So really focusing more on the emotions of the kids instead. I know that's not maybe traditionally what we do, as you have with the culture of schooling side, but I think that's how I've been trying to think about it. So even in the times when I was a school board, we talked about maybe grades and stuff, I've really been trying to put it in context of I think Dr. Nyberg said, that's how kids think about themselves, and that's how they identify and value themselves sometimes. So thinking about it in terms of that. To the second one, I actually went and I looked at our purpose statement. And it was interesting because I always think our purpose statement is, you know, we're empowering individuals to reach their full personal and educational potential. So not necessarily measuring them based upon their grades, but measuring us on how do we help them to be the best of whatever they want to be or whoever they are. But that still is full of achievement. You know, that is solidly on the what can they achieve. So I think there's a question there of, you know, if you're empowering somebody to help them to achieve what they want, does that still have the negative aspect there? I don't know.
I want to answer question 2 only. Can I do that?
Go ahead.
Okay. I love this question. I think about it often, and I think of it from a idealistic perspective that I would love that if we could do it, is that we focus on the child, each child finding a purpose. So I read this really good article, and I had to pull it up. It's a HuffPost article, and it's called "The Buddha Walks into the Office, Be Who You Want to Be." So basically you do this exercise, and like a meditative exercise, and you start pulling your values. So your principles, what is a guiding value that you have? So let's say, so instead of asking what you want to be when you grow up, you ask who you want to be. And that guide, your values will guide you to that. So if you like to help people, you might end up being a doctor or a garbage truck driver, right? Like it's kind of like that guiding value. And I love that ideal. And I wish that by 3rd grade, all the kids will be reading. And by 5th grade, they're kind of heading that way. They're heading that like, what's my purpose? So I wonder if that would help us with the push-up problems, absenteeism, because everyone will go to school with a purpose. They will see themselves in the future. That's it.
Great.
Could I ask
Thank
Director
you.
Colton to please send that article? I would love to read that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I would too. Would you include me, and I'll share it with my team as well?
I can do that. Yes.
Thank you. And just so you know, I've asked Chris to be our timekeeper to keep us on track. And so she gave the 2-minute warning. So Dr. Jones, that's where we're at with time.
Okay, so let me wrap it up. Thank you all for participating in this time. As we enter into this work session, let us keep in mind that achievement is not, and I think it's already been mentioned in the comments, let us keep in mind that achievement is not the same as well-being. Let us work hard together to reverse the order that achievement takes priority over personhood, relationship, community, and belonging. And let's work together to humanize our educational system. Thank you. I look forward to our discussion tonight. Superintendent Reisner.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So we are going to go into and just as a reminder, here are our district priorities. We had a very lengthy conversation about whether or not we needed to change the order of our district priorities and move number 5 up to number 2. But what we decided was these were never intended to be listed as they are 5 separate priorities, not 5 in order. So we decided against it, but that doesn't mean that number 5 is not equally as important as number 1 or number 2. So just wanted to, as you look through those, make that comment. You can go to the next slide. So as we go through tonight, what you're going to see is a lot of team effort here. And so we want you to be able to ask questions openly. This is a work session, so ask questions when you want to, and you're going to see a lot of participation from other directors as well. As you know, we meet every day at 9 a.m. And so we're pretty used to this really interactive nature, and we want to make sure that that is what you all see from us as well. So data caveat, this year we have an amazing data and research person. And so I think you've heard from her before, Erin Meek, and she has done a great job getting data for us. So I'm going to let her kick off with the data caveat.
Hi, everyone. Just a couple of notes. So you'll notice as we're going through this that everyone can hear me okay, correct? I just want to make sure. I switched over to my wired because we wore the battery down in my wireless. So for our baseline data, most of our baseline is coming from 2018, 2019. The reason why that is that was our last uninterrupted year of learning. So that is considered to be our last sort of typical learning model year. So that is the year that we're going to be pulling the majority of our learning data from. That is with the exception of our MAP data. The reason why our MAP data is coming from 2019, 2020 is because that's the first year that we started using MAP data in the district. So I wanted to make sure that the board kind of understood that. That's not to say that we're not still going to be examining 2019, 2020 data as we move forward, or 2020, 2021 data. It's not as though those are lost years. We're certainly going to use that data as we move forward. We're just going to make sure that we realize that those were during the pandemic, and just like other school districts across the the world, really, we're going to have to recognize that the pandemic is going to affect that data as we move forward. Does anybody have any questions about this sort of little data note? Nope. All right. Thank you.
Okay, so next slide. So we're going to break these down. I'm sure you all had a chance to look at this, but we're just going to go ahead and go through this by priority. And so one of the things I want to make sure that I point out is that really our job, superintendent and board, is to set kind of these big priorities. And then the goal underneath them. And then the action plans are where the buildings come in. And so our buildings then build their action plans off of kind of this baseline data and these goals. So as we go through, you won't hear a lot of talk about, so what are the action steps that we're taking? Because that would be included in those action plans, which would be more building level planning. I will tell you that our buildings do have action plans, and they are consistent with our priorities. So go ahead and go forward. So the first priority is educational equity and improvement. And our two goals under that were that by the end of the 2022 school year and ongoing, the percent of our third grade students reading at grade level will show statistically significant increase as measured by ISASP. And so I'm going to just start with that one. And Eric, if you could scroll up just a little bit. Sorry, I just can't see the bottom. No, yep, perfect. So our baseline 2018-19 baseline is 66% of our district third graders are proficient or advanced in ELA, English Language Arts, or English Language Arts on the ISASP. So if you remember, ISASP is our state assessment tool. And this was one of the goals we set because research shows that the more students who are proficient at the end of third grade, the better outcomes for graduation. So yes, we do have this broken down by our groups, and I would anticipate that would be your next question. So I will turn it over to to Erin. I will turn it over to Erin to show us that breakdown by subgroup. And that means she's got to share her screen.
Yep, sorry, give me just one.
I think we have, yep, perfect. Thank you.
Yep, no problem here. Sorry, 1 minute. There we go. Zoom is a little. Okay, can everyone see my, nope, I have too many monitors, hang on. Here we go. Let's try that. Is that working? Okay,
Yep.
great.
Yeah.
All right, so here we have our ISASP data broken down by demographics. So one thing I will note is that the ISASP, when they break down their data, they break down their data by racial demographics. They do not break it down into, I'm sorry, do I need to zoom in any further? Can everyone see? All right, that's why I check. I have this problem frequently. Everybody else says, Aaron, zoom in. I can't see your screen. Okay, hang on, let me, is that better? All right, great.
Aaron, can I just ask a real quick question? Is this the baseline data that you're breaking out for us? Is that what this is?
This
Okay,
is
just wanted to.
2018, 2019. So it's worth
Okay.
noting our students did not take the
Right.
ISASP in 2019, 2020. That's another reason why we're using
Yeah.
2018, 2019.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I didn't want to make an assumption.
Nope, absolutely. So, so we have here our sample total third graders, 347 third graders. Okay, so ISASP puts all of the kids into one pot. Let's consider it in that way, right? Now they put all the kids, now let's say we have students perhaps who have more than one racial identity, right? We have lots of kids who are that way in lots of school districts across the US, across, in Ames as well. Now, ISASP does not break that down for us. So they do not have a multiracial category, right? So we have this number here, 347, but when we add all these numbers together, we get 400 students. So that's why we don't have percentages here for these individual students, because the numbers would be, I believe the technical term is wonky, yes? So, but what we do have here is our percentage of students who identify as Hispanic or American Indian or Asian or Black or African American or Native Hawaiian or white who are at or above reading level. That statistic we can get, okay? So this is just our just for racial demographics. I'll get to some of our other demographic markers in just a minute. So our 504 students, special education, we have that. Yes, absolutely.
So what did you do with the students who are multiracial?
The students who are multiracial, we just don't have that for the moment. So I can code that data by hand. It's just time consuming. So we can certainly do that.
So they're just not represented in these data.
It's just not represented in this data at this moment. Yes, that's true.
And so if I do the math, you said it was 400, so it should be around 63 students then?
So it will be about 63 students. So we have 347. So actually, if you add this number together, right, we'll get the wrong number, right? So if we add 33 plus 2 plus 43 plus 46 plus 275, we get 400 instead of 347, right?
But that's what I'm saying. So then they are represented here.
They are represented here. So what we're saying is students are overrepresented.
So this isn't helping. So for example, my kids are biracial. Where did you put them?
They are represented in here more than once.
Oh, I see what you did. Okay.
Yeah, they're represented here more than once. So what from an ethical standpoint, I'm not going to erase anyone's identity. So I'm not going to choose which one is the most important.
I understand. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you.
So that's sort of where we're at right now. So we can break this down further as we have more time to code the data further. But from ISASP's standpoint, from their data file, it's just coded as, a series of ones. And
so then my kids are Black and white.
So they're represented in here twice.
I see. Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And so this is and I've had this conversation with the directors, and from an ethical standpoint, I'm not going to erase that, right? And so I'd rather have them in here twice than try to say, well, which one am I supposed to pick? And from a personal standpoint, my children are also biracial. Which one am I supposed to pick?
So did they choose it this way? Because I know in the past, I believe, and I could be totally wrong, that children are forced to pick one race, even if they're biracial. Did they have?
Depends on the form. They're that way.
Because I'm just wondering why they. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Director.
No, I know, but I mean, is that why they did it this way? Because that's how they used to do. I mean, years ago, Because I have biracial nieces and nephews, and I know that they had to choose what they were going to be, right? They couldn't say that I was two.
I really couldn't say. It really depends. It depends on if they're using the federal form, if they're using the state form, if they're it really depends. Even at Infinite Campus, there's the state version, the federal version, and it's so, and some kids, even if they are biracial, are not going to choose that. And so it's a little bit muddy, unfortunately. And so I, for the moment, chose not to try to erase anything. And so, well, thank you. So what we can see though is that at least when we look at it, it's a little bit muddy for the moment, but based on what we know, the students who are identified in the data as Hispanic and Latinx, even if they're identified as potentially another race, but if they are identified as Hispanic or Latinx, 48.48% of them are at or above reading level, right? Our Native American Indian or Alaskan Native students, there's a small number of them, 0% of them are at or above reading level. Our Asian American students or our Asian students are 79% of them are at or above reading level, right? Our Black or African American students, approximately 48% of them are at or above reading level. Our Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander students are 0 at or above reading level. Our white students, about 67% of them are at or above reading level. So it's broken down in that way. Does that make sense to everyone?
It does. Oh, sorry.
No, it's absolutely fine.
We're asking the board. Sorry.
Yeah. Do any of the directors or district staff or anyone have anything to add to our racial breakdown of this particular data point? No? Okay. So some of our other markers, we have our EL students, we have our 504 students, our special education students, our free and reduced lunch students, and our homeless students. We didn't have the same issue that we had with our racial and ethnic markers. There is still some overlapping here. One thing I will note is just because a student is represented in one row doesn't mean they aren't necessarily represented in another row. So one thing I would like to just draw attention to is something that in data we call siloing, which is where we think of a student, okay, if they're represented in one row, we never think about them again. We don't want to do that. So a student who could be in our EL row could be represented in our free and reduced lunch row as well. So we don't want to only think about them in one place. They could be represented in other places as well. And that's something that Dr. Jones and I have been discussing about how we can look into those intersectional connections.
In this case, what do the percentages represent?
The percentages that are highlighted, or the percentages that are over here? I'll be happy
Both,
to,
because because they don't add up the way I would normally have expected. So what's that a measurement of?
Sure. So I'm happy. So so this is one of the reasons why I keep my screen so small, because it's easy for me to see things when I'm zoomed out. So I'll be happy to explain. The column that we have here on the far left is our total school, or our, in this instance, grade population. So these are all of our third graders, right? So for our third graders, 23 of them in the district are EL students. That means that 6.63% of our third graders are EL students. So how I get that number is I take 23, I divide it by 347, right? And then I do that for our 504 students. We have 8 third graders of 504 plans. That makes up 2.31, right? Same for special education, same for our free and reduced lunch, same for homeless students. The reason why we have all these percentages here is because and I think the district seems to like to do this too, and I know Dr. Jones does, we like to see how equitable is our participation, right? How equitable is our distribution of scores, right? If we have 6.63% of our third graders as EL students, right? Then if we're looking at our scores across here, right? And we look at our scores of not proficient, proficient, and advanced, and we scroll back up and we see 33% of our third graders are proficient. We go back down and look at our EL students, 33%, right, of our EL students should be, right, should be not proficient. We should look at across the board and we should be able to tell, we should be able to see. And so when we look here, we see 30.44% of our EL students, only 30% of them are proficient in reading. And that tells us perhaps we have a little bit of an equity issue. Does that make sense?
The yellow percentage and the first column percentage makes sense. The second, third, and fourth percentages, I'm still trying to figure out what those relate to.
Sure. I'm sorry.
I think what you did, you said 33% when it was 13% dropping down. So 13% of our EL students are whatever that first column is.
Yeah. And I do apologize if there's an error or two in this chart. It's very possible. I did put a lot of these charts together relatively quickly today. I will apologize if there's one or two errors. This is the chart. This is the column that I spent the majority of my time on today because I thought it was the one that we would be most interested in making sure that we had the data on, because we were talking about our reading levels. And I can go back and double check and make sure that when I pulled from my spreadsheets that everything is correct.
No, I think I got it now. So for the EL students, then what you're saying is 30%, 30.44% of the EL students are reading proficient. And then if you look at the first column, 6.63% of the third grade students are EL students. And if you look at the next column, you're saying 13.
Yeah, this is definitely, I'm looking at that, this one that you're pointing out, Dr. Beerbaugh, that's definitely a typo. I think that's definitely a typo. I apologize. As I'm looking at it.
Okay, so that's not saying that.
The correct percentage, no.
Okay, that just looked like maybe you were saying 13.79% of the students that are in that column up above are EL students.
No, I'm looking at it and I'm looking in you have a very good eye, because I'm looking and saying that's not right. You're fine. The one thing, of course, that's not correct. So thank you for.
Well, I couldn't understand the next row either, but we'll pass. I get the orange row. That makes
okay. I appreciate you pointing it out. I will, and you know what? Hang on. Now it's going to bother me. So,
Alan, do you see that row as orange or yellow?
I see it as yellow, but I had my son just bring me some food, so I was just making up a color as I went.
Harry, do you mind just scrolling out for a few minutes so we can see the whole table? That's all I wondered.
Alan's got Ames in the blood.
Thank you.
Ames through and through.
Yeah. He absolutely just pointed out where I had a data input error, and now I feel silly. So, but anyway, the where I would encourage us to spend probably, I mean, I will make sure that all of those are correct as we move forward. But this is where we're talking about being at reading level. This is our goal. And this is where we're talking about potentially seeing some concerning data as far as our reading levels. We have students who are certainly, at or above the average. And we have some student groups who are certainly below or significantly below our average.
Okay, so I want to move on to the next slide, which is math. And so going back, actually, well, yeah, we better go back to the slide.
I'm trying to.
I apologize.
I'm trying to not share my screen anymore, and I'm having a hard time getting out of it.
Okay.
There we go. Hey, thank you for that.
So the next one is very similar to that first one. And this is as measured on our MAP assessment, the percent of 8th graders meeting algebra readiness indicator. And so one of the things that MAP does is allow us to measure this, which is really exciting. What I will say as a district, 74% of our 8th graders are listed as average, high average, or high. That is very, very high for most middle school students. So I will point that out. There are very few, it's very high. 74% is a really strong number. So then when we go back and look at the breakdown, and I want to make sure that we're moving through this at a good pace, but when we go back, is it too hard for you to go back again, Erin? I apologize. And we will share the breakdown with the board in a PDF document after the meeting, so you can spend some more time on it as well. But we did the same thing in looking at the groups of students for our algebraic thinking on MAP. And so here's how that breakdown looks.
I'll try to go through this one a little bit more quickly. So this is only by racial group because that is how the MAP data is broken down. I am going to do some work to do it by student ID number through our files so that we can get a breakdown of things other than just racial and ethnic group on our side. So our percentage of students, just like Superintendent Reisner said, is 74% of our 8th graders, which is very high. It is higher than the national average according to NWEA, just a little bit higher, broken down by racial and ethnic group. Here we have, right, so it's pretty, like I said, it's relatively high. So for our Hispanic and Latinx students, the average for, so we do this by the really, so we see here that we have 5 sort of categories, right? Low, average, high average, and high. The 3 that are considered proficient or above are the top 3, average, high average, and high. So the top 3 then that are considered algebra ready for our students then is like we said, the top 3. Our students, our Hispanic and Latinx students are at 58%. Our Asian students that are considered algebra ready, 92.31%. Our Black and African American students, 33.33%. Our white students, 81.59%. And our 2 or more races students, or our multiracial students, 81.25%.
And again, we'll go ahead and put this in a PDF and share this with you after we do just a little bit of data cleanup.
Yes.
Because I know it'll bug Erin. Any questions?
It'll bug me, yes.
Yeah, I know. Any questions on this? Anything you want to add, Dr. Jones?
Nope, go ahead.
Okay. So we will go back to the main slideshow. Sorry about flipping back and forth, but looks like we're getting pretty good at it. The next area that we're going to talk about is this was within our priority 1, is that by the end of the 2020, okay, and so this is a change. I believe this one was a change. I don't have my master document. I apologize in front of me, but by the end of the 2022 school year, 23 school year, we will increase the overall 3-year average graduation rate for 4- and 5-year cohorts with all demographic groups as measured by the state graduation rate calculation. So in looking at this, I'm going to go ahead and let Dr. Hawkins speak to some of this.
Great. Yep. So Yeah, because it's a 3-year average of those graduation rates. If you remember, we've discussed with the board previously that what we were not looking for was a singular outlier of a good year or a poor year, but rather an overall increase in our trend. So that's why you see a 3-year average for both the 4 and the 5-year cohort. I want to make sure that we're all seeing this graph the same way. What this reports is that class of 2019, if you will, that 4-year cohort, in other words, anybody who would have graduated in the year 2019 within those 4 years, as well as in 2019, that cohort of students that graduated within 5 years. In other words, that gray bar is typically what we would maybe call the class of 2018 if you add a year's worth of graduation totals to it. So again, I want to make sure that we're understanding what the orange and the gray bar mean here. I do have some breakdown information about how that breaks down into various groups. And so I'll go ahead and share my screen in order to be able to do that. Okay. I don't share as often in this, so hopefully I can get to what I want to show you.
We can see it.
Are you seeing? Okay. So I want to make sure that I'm being really clear with the board on exactly what we're sharing. Remember, I talked about how the orange bar represented the class of 2019 as a 4-year cohort, and the gray bar represented also a 5-year cohort in 2019, but it really, again, traditionally we would think about that as the class of 2018 plus those graduates that graduated in year 5. You can see here that this is, by the way, what is this? This is the Iowa School Performance Profile. It's produced by the state of Iowa. It's that annual report that comes from the state giving us various data points back. So this is data as processed by the state of Iowa. And you can see here, if it allows me to highlight, that the class of 2018 is represented by that 4-year graduation rate. So I know this is a little complex, but we showed you the 5-year cohort of 2018, and the data I'm going to talk with you about in just a moment is the 4-year cohort from 2018, but that's the best comparable data that we can give you. So as we look at this 4-year graduation rate, if you can see where my cursor is, the state gives us both 4-year and 5-year graduation rate data. I would encourage us to focus on the 4-year column here simply because it's the most comparable data to what we were showing you in the original slide. But you can see in that 4-year column, again, for that class of 2018, of all the students in that graduating class, 98.34% of them graduated. By the way, this little diamond shape with the number below represents where the state average is for that same mark. So the state average for the class of 2018 was a 91.41 graduation rate. You can see in Ames, it was a 98.34 for those students who graduated in 4 years. You can see from those who would have been in a free and reduced lunch status, we had 78 students that qualified for that. 73 of them graduated in a 4-year cohort for a 93.59 average, which you can see exceeds the state average. 21 of those students would have been in that graduating class would have been identified as a student with an IEP. 19 of those 21 graduated on time, if you will, for an average of 90.48%. I'll stop being so repetitive, but I want to be very clear on how it's set up so that you know how to look for the number of students in that group, what their overall average was, and how that compares to the state average. As I scroll down and you look at that same group, again, correlating to that gray column on the original graph that we showed you, you can see this broken down then by various demographic groups. I'm just going to remain quiet for a moment so you can read through and look at those data points. And then I'll try to answer any questions that you might have over our graduation rate data.
So Dr. Hawkins, would it Sorry, can I ask a question now, or do you want us to keep looking at the? Is that right?
If you're ready for questions, I'll do my best to answer. You bet.
I am. So I think I think I'm reading this correctly. Then the chart above then, so we had 5 students out of this class not graduate, and they were all free and reduced lunch. Of those 5, 2 of them had IEPs, right? Because we can, right? So there's what was the term Aaron used? Intersectionality. Is that the correct word? So, but then you could also take them down below those 5 then out of there, then you could see 1 was Black, 1 was Hispanic, 3 were white, right? I'm looking at that. Okay.
You're doing a good job analyzing it.
Nice job.
Thanks. It was a cleaner data set to be able to do that. So
great job.
So in looking at this, I'll just do one small comment, but it's a riff back to something Dr. Jones said about 1.5 years, 2 years ago that stuck with me. We're looking at data, but these are specific students. And these are like 3 students that are in need that we need to find a way to help, right? To go back to the whole, how are the kids doing? There are 3 kids that are not doing well here.
5, yes. 5 students that are.
Well, yeah, I was looking at this one. I didn't break it down as good as Director Franzen, but yeah.
Yeah. And yes, I won't be lengthy with this, but as a former high school principal, I kind of knew in the back of my head the research and the statistics around students that don't graduate, so I can rattle it off pretty easily. Students who do not graduate on time typically earn 33 cents on the dollar. They typically have a shorter lifespan. They're 62 times more likely to land in prison. Their children have a 1 in 17 chance of earning a bachelor's degree. That's what some of the national research has to say about students who don't graduate on time. And so when you say we've got 5 kids who are worried about it and who may be in a bad spot, that's a pretty bad spot. Doing what we can to get kids across that stage is critically important.
And can we assume, so since we have 24 students that are Black African American and 20 students Hispanic and 1 on each group, can we assume that there's an overrepresentation of them not graduating since there's 213 white students and 3 did not graduate? Do you see what there is a smaller number?
I understand the question yet. I'm sorry. Can you try? I'm not trying to be dense, but I think
she's asking about proportionality, but it is factored in already.
Okay,
is how I would look at that.
I guess one way I would try to answer that question would be this. If the average of our students graduating is 98.34, of course, we all want 100% for the same reasons that we just addressed. But if on average, our students graduate at a rate of 98.34%, if we have a group of students that are below that average, then I would say they're being underrepresented in that total, right? That means some other group is graduating at a higher percentage and they're graduating at a lower percentage. And that may be where we want to focus some attention.
So it's there already. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, 95% or 95.83% of our Black African American students are graduating in that four-year time period. Yeah,
thank you. Thank you. Okay.
For this year, right? Obviously, we wouldn't want to, and that's really the point of the goal, is we want to be able to track that data over time to say, we have data for 1 year that we're showing you. We're interested in a district of seeing those trends and making improvement in those trends for every group. That's really the essence of the goal.
Thanks. Okay.
Do we want to move to the next data point?
Please.
Great. Okay, very good. I'm not sure if it's Eric or JD that's controlling but do I have to stop sharing here? All right, the next data point relates to students being pushed or pulled out of school, right? The goal itself reads that each year we'll decrease the number of students being pushed or pulled out of our schools as measured by the ending status entered into Infinite Campus. So in other words, the way that we code those students at the end of their experience. In 2018-19, we had 19 total students that would have been identified as push out, pull out. You can see that the percentage there is 0.93, and I'll show you in just a moment how we get to that percentage. But before I get into a breakdown of that data or some digging into the numbers, is there anything that you'd want to ask about the goal itself or that pie chart there?
Can you define the pull-out? I'm familiar with the push-out. What would be the definition of pull-out?
So the literature from the National Dropout Prevention Center would really identify that there are things that push students out of school. I'll give you a typical one: bullying. I don't want to come to school anymore because when I come to school, there's a bully and they make me feel bad and I don't want to be there. So there's something inside the school that's pushing the child out. There are also things that pull children away from us. I'll give you another typical one. That would be economics, or I need to have a job. If I don't get a job, we can't afford to pay for the things in my house. And so while that job doesn't,
that type of thing, I have to babysit. There's no other option. That type of thing.
So there are things that exist in children's lives that are centered in the school that push them away, and there can be things in school that pull them from us. And again, that's just the National Dropout Research Prevention Center characterize that concept.
Okay, do you want to?
All right, I'll go ahead and move to the data then. I don't know. Here, let me share my screen. I'm just going to share a similar document to what Aaron Meek was sharing with us here. Sorry, I'm not quite as. Okay. Are you guys seeing my screen?
We are.
Okay, great. Let me know if this is readable or not readable. Right, but this is, again, you could see this is the same presentation or same document that Aaron was presenting from. And again, as you heard Superintendent Reisner say, we'll be creating this into a PDF so that the board can examine it at its leisure. You can see here, well, can you see here? Do I need to enlarge this somehow?
I think it's good.
Okay, great. So you can see here that 19 students, as I reported to you from the pie chart, represented by 0.93%, but you might 93% of what? The state asks us to report graduation rate, or I'm sorry, not graduation. The state asks us to report push out, pull out rate for all students as it applies to any student in grades 7 through 12. So you can see here, our total sample is all of those students in grades 7 through 12, or in this case, for this year, that was 2,048 students. So the 19 students are not just represented. I know a lot of times we think about it like, okay, you got your senior class and you got this many who graduate, and then you got the other number, and that must be your push out, pull out. Well, I think it's probably good to point out that of course we know that a graduate and a dropout are not the same thing. Right, so somebody can not graduate in a 4-year cohort. That doesn't mean they're a dropout, right? We don't count them as a push out, pull out until they're no longer engaging in our system. And the state does ask that we report it as a part of a 7 through 12 grade span. So what you're going to see here is some numbers of how many students in grades 7 through 12 are represented in different demographic groups. So there was 168 students identified in that Hispanic Latinx group, right? That makes up 8.2% of that total population. There were 2 students in that group that would have been appropriate to list as a push out, pull out, which actually represents 10% of that overall population of 19. Again, I'll point out an area at least that draws my attention and concern. There's 208 students listed as Black African American, representing 10.1% of that total population of 7th through 12th graders, but yet the 4 push-out pullouts represent 21% of group, and so on and so forth. I'm going to hover here. If there's a need for further explanation as to how this table is put together, please let me know. Or if you have any questions about this portion of the table, let me know. Otherwise, I will scroll to the next little bit of that table.
What do you mean by reporting errors?
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, I didn't think I said reporting errors. These would be 6 students who, as Aaron was talking about earlier, identify more than, well, I don't know, Aaron, I might ask for you to hop in on this one because there is 2 or more races. So why is there a reporting error here?
I don't know. So in the Excel file that you can download from the state of Iowa, that you get the graduation and dropout rates from, there were 6 extra enrolled students in the total Ames number. So the number that they gave us for our total enrollment for 7th through 12th graders was 2,048. And then I did the total enrollment for all of our racial and ethnic groups, and it was 2,042. And then I added them up again, and then I added them up again, and then I added them up again, and it was 2,042. And then I kept coming back and I said, where are these 6 students? And I couldn't find them, and I couldn't let it lie. And so I had to make sure that they were counted somewhere. And so I put them there.
So this is something we can contact the state about and find out why there's that discrepancy.
Yes.
Unless you want to continue to examine this, I'm going to show you that there is a little bit more data available to you here as well that I know you're not going to see unless I move my screen. So in addition to racial and ethnic groups breakdown, there's also breakdown by gender as well as some identified student groups. Again, the table is put together the exact same way. So you can get a sense of the overall composite makeup of that sample group of students, and then compare that, of course, to the percentage of push-out, pull-out students. And again, I know
I might be asking kind of a dumb question because I'm getting very sleepy. But when you're doing the graduation rate that we had, it seems like a relatively small number of students who didn't graduate overall. We're not counting all these kids that for whatever reason just never made it there. These are just extra kids who didn't graduate, but is that right, or am I wrong on that?
No, let me rephrase. I think we're saying the same thing. Okay. No, a group of students identified as push-out, pull-out does not only look at those students who did not graduate. Again, there's a difference between not graduating and being pushed or pulled out of school, right? What the state would call dropout. In other words, I can be identified by that group as early as 7th grade if I refuse to come to school and despite efforts don't come back to school. So in other words, when we think about graduates, we really only think about that senior class. But when the state thinks about, I'm just going to use the state term dropout. I know that that's not how we choose to use it here. When the state thinks about that term, they think about students in 5 different grades for a variety of different reasons. And so no, the numbers won't equate between graduation and non-graduation and push out, pull out.
Can I say it a different way?
Okay.
So the kids who aren't graduating are actively engaged, but for whatever reason, they didn't meet the graduation requirements. And these kids are kids who are just not actively engaged at all, that we've lost them somewhere along the way.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes. Perfect. Yep.
So technically,
or they are actively engaged and they aged out, right? The laws say that you can only attend school through the year in which you turn 21 on or before September 15th. right? So it is possible for an engaged, I'm trying, it is possible for a child to reach the age where we would say, sorry, I know you're trying, but you're done.
But is that very many of these kids?
No.
Okay.
I just wanted to be fully transparent, and it may not be only those kids that are completely disengaged.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
And I wanted to say too, that sometimes we lose students when they may drop out, but then they may move out of state. So being able to, we own that. So if that student never register for another school district, within another school district, and there's no record of that student finishing school, we own that data. And so sometimes that happens as well.
Great point.
Yeah.
Okay, if you could go back, I think, Eric, are you controlling?
I'll stop sharing so that he can. Yep.
Can I ask one more question?
Yep.
Since you're looking at grades 7 through 12th, so if it's a 7th grader who, for whatever reason, a push or pull out, are they recounted as an 8th grader every year as their age increases, or they're just counted that one time that they were a push or pull out for? But what if they come back?
I don't know the answer to that. Do you, Dr. Jones or Dr. Hawkins?
Yeah, based upon the way the data is pulled, they would be counted every year, right? So we have to identify that group of students every year. If they, obviously our goal is that they re-engage, right? In the several years, we have not seen students that young be counted in our push out, pull out report, which is good. But yes, because we have to report it annually, if that student, let's say, were to drop out or to be pushed out and never re-engage anywhere else, right, that would continue to be data we would be accountable for and report.
Yep, and the typical word that you'll see is cohort. So if we have, let's say we have 357 graders enter the middle school, the expectation is that 350 of that cohort group will graduate in for whatever years by the 12th grade, they will graduate with their peers. But when they don't graduate with their peers, then that's when that cohort dropout or push out or pull out is counted. So cohort is a good word to kind of think of keeping those students together, that they all graduate together with their peers.
Now, this question may seem like it really is silly again, but have they been keeping the 7th to 12th grade record of push or pull out? How many years have they been following that? Do you know? Is it have they done it for years and years, or is it fairly?
Yeah, it's a required annual reporting from the state of Iowa. So for
a long time.
Yeah, for the 15 years that I was a principal, it was required to be reported. So I've got to imagine we have that data going back for quite some.
And there's federal reporting as well, and that's gone on for a very, very long time. They do change that periodically, how it's calculated, so it's hard to get a really longitudinal, good, comprehensive set of data. But yeah, it also can be, it also is reported federally. So moving on to the next slide, we're still in priority 1. We may not make the time that we set, but that's okay. So this one is the goal by the end of the 2021-22 school year, we will show a statistically significant increase in the percent of students from underrepresented groups participating in accelerated classes. And so what we're looking at specifically, some of those courses that we typically think of as gatekeeper type courses. That's what I call it. That's my term. That's not official. Is there a better term for that, Dr. Jones? But those gatekeeper courses that by the end of 8th grade, if you have not taken, for example, compacted math, you really have a difficult time going into any advanced math at the high school. Not that it's impossible, but it is very difficult. So those are kind of those gatekeeper courses. So this is a really good one for us to keep an eye on. So here you can see the breakdown of that. Erin, did you have additional information on this one, or Dr. Jones to share?
We have it. Any of us who you would like to share it can share it.
If anybody would like to see additional breakdown of that, we will share it anyway.
I'll be happy to share my screen, and then whoever can walk through it.
You got it, Dr. Jones.
Okay, so one of the things I also wanted to explain, we wanted to try to find one class that would give us a baseline point of reference. And so like Superintendent Reisner said, that compacted math class was the one that we wanted to look at. So if you kind of look at the identity markers broken down in percentages, I'll give you an opportunity to just kind of look at those numbers. Pay attention to the sample total. We have approximately out of 6th and 7th graders, we have 796 students, and 86 of those students are identified in compacted math or enrolled in compacted math. And then again, if you look at the yellow box under percentage participation, you will see the percentages of the demographics of those students who are enrolled in compacted math.
So is this the 6th grade compacted math or the 7th grade or an aggregate? Because you can get into it either in 6th grade or 7th grade, right?
Yep, so if you look at the first gray box at the top, we have both 6th and 7th graders.
So if you were in it in 6th grade, you wouldn't get recounted in 7th, correct?
Right.
And this is 1819.
Yes, this is 1819 data.
Am I reading that right?
Yes, Director Rankin.
So was there any change 1920? Because that would have been last school year, right? Or do you not know that answer?
Erin, do we know that answer?
I don't have it in front of us right now, but I'd be happy to provide it.
Do you want us to get that?
No, I was just, so we're looking at this because it's the baseline data. We're not looking at our most current data that goes to this goal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We will report that though. Like we'll get on a different reporting schedule here and report a little sooner in each year than this. This is kind of that, our first real good baseline data for this. And then we'll get on a little bit different reporting schedule. And I'll talk about that at another meeting, what we have kind of laid out for that.
Yep.
Thank you.
So this is the racial and ethnic breakdown of the data. We do have some different markers as well below. Dr. Jones, would you like me to scroll down?
Yep, go ahead.
Is everyone else ready for me to scroll down? One thing I would like to note is I was having trouble verifying some of our 504 information. I don't know why it was giving me trouble, and I didn't want to put bad numbers in front of you. I would also, one thing I'd like to clarify is I went back and looked at the numbers and then the data was correct. It was proportionate information. I'll explain that in the email that I send out. So it's about proportionality, and so I'll explain that in the email that I send out about the PDF. It was bothering me, so I'll make sure that I explain it.
I did tell her she could wait until the email.
No, it was bothering me. I'm really sorry.
Needed to say something, so.
No problem. I
It made
realized
sense
when we
to
looked at
me,
it next,
Erin.
I was
it
going
because
back and
they made
looking
you
at it. I was
zoom
like, I
in.
know I checked that. I know I did.
That's why I had you
If they
zoom
wouldn't have
out.
Yeah,
Once you
if you
zoomed out, you
wouldn't
could
have
see
zoomed out.
it.
No, it's absolutely fine. It was really, really bothering me. And I was,
Yep.
so.
Thank you for clarifying.
Mm.
One of the things that I would like to quickly just point out in the identity markers at the bottom of this chart is that typically we have this conversation around race and free and reduced or low SES. But I thought it was interesting when you look at the compacted math enrollment, when you look at race and compare it to other identity markers, specifically that FRAM students. So even in students that would identify as low SES or free and reduced lunch, they have 5 students identified in the compacted math class. And then when you look at 504s compared to students with IEPs, students with 504s, there are 4 students identified or enrolled in compacted math versus when you look at special education, as well as our EL students and our homeless students.
Again, we'll put this in a PDF for you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Dr. Jones.
Welcome.
Okay, if we can go back to the next slide. Thank you. So some indicators, oops, got to change my, so some indicators on we're looking at that goal of increasing our percentage of students from underrepresented groups who participate in our co-curricular or extracurricular activities. And so I want to be very transparent with you. When we did our equity audits, we noted that we didn't have a real good system for collecting this data. So that system is a work in progress. We think we've identified some ways that we're going to improve on that. So what we did is we took one indicator. We used National Honor Society, and then we broke that down for this. We're going to show you, though there's a couple other things, but we're going to show you this to begin with. So this is the data on that. I don't think we have another, do we have another chart on this one? Table?
Yes.
Perfect. Then this one is, we took, and did we also do golf?
Yes.
Okay, great job. Okay, so the first one we're looking at is girls and boys swim and dive by race. And we wanted to pick athletic events that have both girls and boys that participate. And again, we would have shown everything if we could have, but we didn't have the data that we needed in a way that we could access it. So we are improving on that, and we'll get that shored up. So this is just a look at the girls. I'm sorry, Dr. Jones, I'll let you go ahead and go over this.
Yep, so when you look at the bar chart here, one of the things for this goal is that, by the end of the 2021-22 school year, we would show a statistically significant increase in the percentage of students from underrepresented or historically marginalized groups participating in co-extracurricular activities as measured by rosters. So Erin would tell you that as she collected this information and as she met with coaches and sponsors, that many of our coaches and sponsors, they had different ways of collecting this information. And so again, I would love for us to revisit this particular goal again so we can make sure that we have accurate information. But specifically, another thing that I want to point out is that we wanted to pick a extracurricular activity where we could, I guess the phrase that I would use is that, you can throw a rock in the room and hit multiple things, right? And so we felt like the girls and boys swim, as well as National Honor Society and boys and girls golf crosses over when we look in terms of equity, both race and ethnicity and low SES or SES, so socioeconomic status. So I thought it was interesting that when we looked at this data, that we felt like if we can address these particular areas, then it would help us to be able to reach some goals in our other extracurricular activities.
I'm sorry if I missed it, but why is Black and African American on there twice?
I just saw that. I don't know.
I'm trying to figure out who's missing. Do you
That's
mean
why I was squinting.
Native American, maybe? I'm trying to figure out who's not here. You don't have 2 or more races or Native American, or I think, I don't know what. Okay, it doesn't matter. They're not there. So just curious.
We've looked at this how many times and none of us caught that.
Yep.
Well,
So we do have it. We do have it on. Yeah, we do have it on the data lab or the supplemental data, broken down in percentages on that one chart that we've been flipping back and forth to.
Would you like me to go over?
Yes, let's flip over there. So,
and as we're flipping, I just wanted to share with you, there is a meeting tomorrow that Dr. Hawkins is having with the ADs and the principals of both the middle and high school. And they're going to come up with that reporting system so that we have that solidified moving forward.
So this is the swimming data broken down in terms of proportionality, with a little bit more detail, with information about proportional percentages. So these are the proportional percentages in terms of representation within the building versus representation in the activity.
and I would just say, as I think you all should be able to see the pattern as we look at the data, especially addressing priority number 1. Is that the last one, Aaron?
I believe, well, for swim, yes.
Yep, so go down to 2018, 2019, girls and boys, golf by race. Give you the opportunity to look at those percentages and numbers as well.
Okay.
Yep.
So moving forward. Do you want to go to the slides, please? I think, right, yeah. Okay, I want to kind of pick up the pace a little bit here because I don't think anybody wants to be here all night. Lisa, I see that. You can turn off your screen at least. I really, really want to move through this a little bit faster. I think the first part is really the critical part, looking at that breakdown. So the second piece for our priorities, we had these priorities around our financial. And so we implemented, for that first goal, we implemented Forecast 5 data system for our financial reporting and budgeting. And so that's kind of the model that we're using. And this will be a much better system for us to be able to report to you all. The second goal under our financial transparency was that we'll utilize a student-based funding process. This is a very, very big switch. This would be a very big switch. This is a 3 to 5 year process. And so we really wanted to go back and Chris and I to develop a focus team to research this further in especially with our equity lens, and then to really map out a process for this because it's a big switch. So just touching on those, we'll move on to the next slide. Priority 3, recruitment, retention, and development of high quality staff. The first one, it was really 2021 school year. We pushed that date back to 21-22 because this year we were supposed to be adopting an instructional framework, and then we were going to begin our work on that. We paused that. You've heard from the teachers as well as all of us that nothing new on their plates this year. So we've pushed that back a year. Going on to the next slide. This is something I do want to take a minute on. I am really, really proud of this. We have made significant improvements in terms of our diversity with our staff this year. And so I don't have the talking points in front of me. So Erin, I'm gonna kick it to you to just hit real quickly on those key talking points. But what I will say is that we have a number of staff members who represent staff members of color who came to us because of the work that we are doing. And so I'm really proud of that they feel like the Ames Community School District is doing the work in a way that shows integrity and commitment to the work. So that's great. Okay, Erin, do you want to hit on the talking points real quick?
Happy to. So I actually put together a staff report on demographics for the Ames Community School District for Superintendent Reisner a couple of months ago on the last 5 years of staff here in the district. Majority of those are around race and ethnicity as well as gender. A couple of key things, and I'd be happy to share that report as well. I'm sure that you would too. White female identified individuals make up the majority of the district's employees. However, representation has increased for people of color in a number of district departments, notably administration, teachers, and EAs. Those are the areas where we've seen big increases. Employment trends have veered closer to parity for both women and men in areas where it veered the other direction in the past 5 years. More male identified teachers and EAs in the past 5 years, which is notable, as well as female identified administrators, both in buildings and in the district level. Women of color occupy more supervisory positions than they have at any point in the past 5 years in 2020. So those are kind of the high notes in that report.
And we will share that report with you. I thought I did, but I can't remember if I did or not, but we will. Erin, let's just include that in the email that we send out, that report.
Happy to.
Great. And then moving to the next slide. This is our panorama survey. This was the goal around percent of respondents who respond favorably.
Superintendent Reisner,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. Could we just go back real quick? Just real quick.
Yep.
So Erin, I can't see on the 2020 line, but I see one of your categories is American Indian. Is there an American Indian staff member represented?
There is someone who identifies as American Indian, yes.
The only reason I point that out is because I think in all the charts, that particular group was not proficient, right? When we think about what we were looking at, and when we're talking about representation, I mean, I know we're not allowed to target certain groups, but I just wondered if there was some way to, I just wanted to point that out, and I'll just leave it there.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, good point. Okay, so next slide. This is our panorama survey feedback for staff on feedback and coaching. You'll see our 2018 was 19%. We were up to 23%, and so we'll continue to work on this. Next, we'll measure this again this year. Next thing is priority number 4. This is the communication piece. And this is, we really wanted to work on the parents knowing how to communicate with their school. And so in 2018, we had 77% improved in 2019 to 81%. And of all years, this year is certainly very important for families to be able to know how to communicate. So we're interested in getting this data this year. Moving to the next one, we're still on priority 4. We have worked really hard on increasing our modes of communication. This is a new goal that we actually just added to our goals because we wanted to make sure that we are working toward being able to communicate with parents in their preferred language, in their preferred first language. So we've been working on the home language survey and then connecting resources to that. Moving to the next slide. This is our last one, and this is really we feel one of our most important ones because if students, Dr. Jones says this very well. Actually, I'm going to let you say it, Dr. Jones, because it's your words, so you go for it.
Yep, it's a belief of mine that, oftentimes we think about the achievement level of our students, and we as I said earlier, we skip the sense of belonging. We skip how our students are doing psychologically as well as physically in terms of safety. And we tend to have a tendency, not just in Ames, but in many school districts, that we jump right to achievement without considering this particular priority. So I'm very interested in looking at sense of belonging, really drilling down on critical consciousness and tying that to our social emotional learning instructional materials for our staff. And so really, really honing in on the sense of belonging, our culture and climate for our school district.
And I think Dr. Shaw tonight, when she spoke, hit on that as well. And I thought, oh, that's what we're talking about tonight on Priority 5. Okay, next slide. So this was our panorama results in 2018-19 and 2020. And you are familiar with these because we have gone over these before as a board, I believe. So, little bit of an increase in both areas, but we are hoping that as we move forward with an adoption of some sort for a social emotional learning program, as well as the hiring of additional student family advocates, that we will see a greater sense of belonging. And we're working with we are and we will continue to work with our classroom teachers on those social emotional learning strategies. Okay, next slide. And then the family response to school fit. This was another area that we wanted to show some improvement on because it goes along with that sense of belonging. So a little bit of improvement, hoping to see a greater improvement as we move forward. This will be interesting. We're a little concerned and did push that date back a little bit because data is going to be a little skewed during COVID. Okay, moving to the next.
Can I stop one quick second? I just have a question on the panorama survey, and I think you had shared this information previously, but I just want to have it all in one place in my notes. Can you tell us the percentage of respondents for the 2018 versus 2019? Because if I'm remembering correctly, I think it was lower for 2019 because it was right in the middle of COVID that went out.
It went out right before COVID, and then it kind of drug on. So the percent of respondents, I do not have off the top of my head. Sabrina, I will get that for you.
Okay.
And we can email that. I apologize.
No I can get close. I think it was between 700 and 800 the first year and like 550 last year respondents. Those are not exact numbers, but I know that there was a couple hundred people difference just because of when COVID hit and when the survey was out.
Thanks.
Okay, appreciate that. So I think that's our last slide, correct? So just what I wanted to do for this year is just focus on a few areas of emphasis. And Eric, if you want to pull that up, this will take no more than 3 minutes probably. Eric, are you pulling that up? The areas of emphasis. Yep, perfect. Thanks. And then, so these are going to just really be our focus areas for this year. Not that we're not, of course, we're continuing, as you know, to measure, to monitor, and to work on all of our areas, but these are going to be those kind of key areas. So you can see the line through 2021, moving kind of our indicator a little bit further out, but increasing that percent of respondents who feel favorably around classroom and school belonging, so students and family. And then the next one is that recruitment and retainment. We did a great job recruiting. We want to continue that, but we also want to ensure that we're retaining those that we bring in.
Superintendent Reisner?
Yep.
Yeah, can you just roll back up? I know you said 3 minutes.
Well, I was
like 25 minutes in ACSD time. I guess all I wanted to say is in terms of belonging, That just made a connection when you're supposed to do this, right? That made a connection for me when we're thinking about what the SRO research was finding. That was really what was important, and that's really what we need to be paying attention to. And so I just wanted to highlight that I appreciate that that'll be something that you're focusing on.
Yep, I know. And I thought about that too, along with all that work around the social emotional learning and how that all is interconnected. Yep, thank you. So then just that, recruitment retainment, I went through that, making sure that we are really keeping those that we get. And then the clear and consistent communication to support positive and proactive community relations. And so this one is really important because during some of our focus groups last year that we did, not focus groups, Listen and Learns, we heard from a lot of parents who didn't know who to go to at their building, or bypass the building to come straight to the district because they didn't know if they could get answers at the building level. So we've been really trying to work at the building level on if we get inquiries that are building based, we refer those back to the building principal. So we don't put the parent off, but we really try to, we have, that lowest level, let's deal with whatever the issue is or whatever the question is at the lowest level. So that's a work in progress, but we want parents to get that relationship built with their child's school to increase that sense of belonging. Okay. That is, do we have one more? No, we don't. Okay. Do we? The modes of communication. Sorry about that. This was one we added just because we felt it was so important that our families and our students are able to communicate in their first and preferred language. And we do have a translation plan in place. And we are working on getting our communication. We're switching tools to be able to communicate in multiple languages. Okay. Whew. How's it? That's it for the goals and priorities. If we, so I'm gonna, if we want to table the community or the communications review, committee review. If we want to table that committee review and do it later, we can certainly do that. I know this has gone.
So long. To what extent do we review the policy itself? Is that just kind of if anyone has any concern?
Yep.
Because I think
everybody would have had a chance to read it ahead of time. And
I think the committee part is going to be like 2 minutes.
Perfect. Everybody had a chance to read it ahead of time. So if I was you, I'd just ask, does anybody have any concerns or changes? And then I'd go to the committee part.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions or comments or changes on the committee charter? Y'all are like, we've been
only
here
one
for
question.
hours.
Only one question, and it'll come up in the second part, and that is really a question of the board of, do we think we want to keep that essentially ad hoc communications committee that we added a year ago? Do we think that's something we want to keep or not? I'm kind of 50-50 on that myself.
I would agree, Alan. I'm kind of 50-50 as well. I feel like the district has done a good job addressing some of the concerns that sort of brought that committee to form last year. What do other people think?
Weren't you two on it?
Yeah, who's on it, and how frequently are you meeting?
Yeah.
Alan and Gina and I are on it, and we've met
twice,
3 times, I think.
I would trust the three of you, your judgment on whether or not that committee has lived its life and should be continued or not continued.
I think I would comment that, like many things, I think that committee was interesting and provided some interesting discussions with Eric, but then COVID hit and everything completely changed. So reasonably, even if we had that committee stay around, I don't think the main things we were talking about focusing on really matter until next fall. So if we do keep it, I'd suggest that we don't try to add the weight of that type of thing to Eric and all the other things that are going on until the fall at the earliest. There's nothing urgent there. It's more urgent than all the things that communications in the district is already doing.
Do we want to take it off for this year and we could always revisit it next year?
I'll be okay with that. Yep.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. Anyone object? All right, so we'll take that one off for now. In terms of the committee membership, I had asked folks to email their preferences to me, and we had a lot of people comment that they felt like we had really barely gotten started with the committees and we hadn't really had time with the committees that we're on, or a lot of preferences to just stay with our current committees. And so when Michelle and I talked, that was kind of what we thought would make the most sense, is just to have everyone stay with their current committees and assignments, unless anyone has any particular objections to that.
I'd have one comment, and that's, if I remember right back to a year ago, Director Linkaitis took on quite a few committees because she was willing to do that. Now that she's in board leadership, I wonder, Michelle, did you have any of those that you might not want to be on, since you're going to have other responsibilities too? I'm not trying to take one from you, and definitely I'm not volunteering, right? I'm just asking, is that something you're concerned about?
You're opening the door for me to, I'm not really prepared to answer that. So I'm fine with how they are right now. I don't.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know how to answer that right now, because I'm new to this role, so I don't know what the time it's going to take. Can I do it later, or do I have to decide now?
I think you should have that be an open question as you go. I mean, I think that's fair. I don't think there's anything in our committee membership, maybe unless another board member has a different opinion, but I guess I would feel bad if a board member, any of you, was feeling like something had changed and you needed to make an adjustment. We're a team, so we ought to be able to say, hey team, I can't get this to work right now. Can somebody else do this? So I would extend that invitation to any of you.
Elisa, are most of them three people on each of them?
So yes, there's 3 people on each committee, and Michelle, you are on 3, while there are a few of us who are on 2.
I think that I like the idea of leaving it open. So, and then Michelle, if you're feeling it's overwhelming, even if you dropped off one committee, if there's still 2 people, I don't think it's that big of a deal, but
that would be great if we could leave it open.
That's what I was going to comment. I think I'm one of the people on 2. I serve on 2 committees, and I think I have 2 that are not, that really aren't burdensome. And so I'm happy if you feel like you want to let one go to pick it up, and I don't need to do it I can do it whenever. So I'm, just available if you decided that's where you want to go.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right, any other comments for committee membership? And I did keep the other things the same as well, the conference boards, Education Foundation, IASB delegate, legislative, and SIAC, all the same as well. Okay.
Thanks everyone for hanging in there tonight.
We made it through the whole agenda. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, moved by Beerbaum, seconded by Perez. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Passes 7-0. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank
And have a good